I call to order the November meeting of the Open Source Voting System Technical Advisory Committee of the San Francisco Elections Commission. Today is Thursday, November 8th, 2018, and the time is now 6:03 p.m. I'm the chair, Chris Giordani. Secretary Chan, can you take the roll?
Chair Chris Giordani.
Here.
Giordani present. Member Carl Haig. Haig not present. Member Roland Catal.
Here.
Catal present. Member Brandon Phillips. Phillips not present. Member Tony Washington.
Here.
Washington present. You have a quorum.
So Member Haig said that he is running late because of traffic, so he should be here at some point. Okay, we'll skip the new member introduction since Member Phillips isn't here. So next item.
Item 2, general public comment. Public comment on any issue within the community's general jurisdiction that is not covered by another item on this agenda.
Okay, seeing none. Next item.
Item 3, open source voting project plan. Discussion and possible action regarding the plan for the open source voting system project. Right, yes, Ms. Jarrell from the Department of Technology.
Okay, great. You're welcome to come sit at the table.
Okay. You're expecting, you have
we're
space
there.
for somebody?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's just those two over there.
Do this. Place. So, does everybody have a copy of the handout that I have?
This thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll just start with just an opening summary where we talk a little bit about the goals for the system and the goals the goals for the project. So we need to reflect that this is a project that the city is sponsoring. So the goals for this project will be, of course, accuracy of the participation in vote privacy, transparency, security, equity and accessibility, and tax dollars spent effectively. So we'll flesh this out over time. You'll see us work to take more comment on what the project goals should be. I'm not prepared to do that right now, but we'll talk in a little bit about how that's going to go. So I'm giving you just a little overview about how and what the approach and methodology will be, a bit about the project schedule. You'll see this go along in phases, where we do a planning phase, a design phase, a roadmap build, and an implementation discussion around the implementation model for the system. And then, of course, all along the way, we're going to be doing communication around what the roadmap is, the cost, and schedule. So on the approach and methodology, we're going to start with a project initiation. That's where we kind of are right now. We're going to be hiring a project manager, reviewing background documents, bringing the project team up to speed. We'll be reviewing the current state of election system. Election systems in the wild. I'm getting even more and more information on tools that might be appropriate and people that have already completed work. Then we'll also work on establishing an independent validation and verification resource. I'm thinking now it may be an in-house resource, so I try to save some money and do it in-house. So there will be a project initiation document that comes out of it. You'll see at the bottom row there, it's all the deliverables, the charter and the governance model. So we'll have a governance model and then status reports monthly as requested by the Elections Commission. So you can kind of look forward through these different phases and see what we're going to be working on. It's important that we reach a point by March next year where we do have a very clear strategy. It's going to be tight to get there, but we could even push it to June because that's when we will go for budget for 1920. So we want to make sure that we have a very, very solid plan. And I know sometimes this technical committee, would like to get on with it. But we're looking at the sustainability of this project, and we cannot ask for funding without having a project plan that is well understood and socialized in the city. And so I ask for your patience as we work through what it's going to take to do this. Now, we have said there are options for us to look at ways to move little pieces forward, and we will be doing that, I think, and we need to talk about how that works. So, but I want to set expectations very clearly on how the city expects projects to work, the documentation that needs to be in place, the work products that need to be in place, and you know, if you skip a step, you go back to zero. And I don't want us to skip a step. I want us to keep moving forward in a way that the city will understand and support, right? Because that's really what this is about. So you can read forward on the different phases. Then I proposed a project schedule. It's a little bit tight, so you have to start with something. So each one of these talks about the time that it will take to do some of these phases, the deliverables that will be as a result. So we're going to keep pushing forward as quickly as we can. We have to remember, though, we're bringing forward a number of people as we're working. The commission, TAC, the community, the city, stakeholders. So there's a lot of people to keep moving forward and making sure that they have buy-in at each step, and that's kind of what I'm going to be working on. So the budgeting and the total cost of ownership is something that we're going to be working towards. This is something that will help us. It should not be something that scares anybody, but having a plan for the software and the hardware, not only for the design, but also the development, the test, the production. We know we have to have the certification system as well, support and disaster recovery. So we need to get good on estimating these costs over, I would say, the next 7 years. And that will help the city understand what is the investment that we need to have going forward. And remember, there's lots of ways we can do investment. There's lots of ways to get funding for the project. So this shouldn't scare anybody. It just means we need to get creative, and we will do that. So I look forward to everybody's ideas on that. Again, not only do we have construction costs, but we have ongoing costs around the software, hardware, and maintenance, patches, upgrades, and refreshes. It's just a way of life, and it just has to be planned and scheduled and costed. You know, the certification, hopefully we can get some relief there, but it is going to be a challenge. And I think we need to recognize that there is training and support. We will need staff and possibly volunteers to help with all of that. And we have the elections department as well we need to consider. So sometimes when you put a big system in, new system in, you have to backfill. So we would end up moving their senior subject matter experts onto the new system and allow them to test and vet it. We would have to backfill them for a period of time, so there's a whole logic to how all of that works. But there's a cost. It is what it is. And we need to schedule it around elections, which we all saw how busy that can be. So the roles and responsibilities, gave you a little look at maybe some early governance ideas. We will definitely have executive sponsors, which of course is the city administrator, the director of elections, Department of Technology, myself, and the mayor's budget office. We will have a project manager or a team that's working tightly together right there. It's taking shape right now. We'll have some business analysts from the Department of Technology that may be assisting at points of time. Depending on our needs, we'll add staff as we need them. Of course, the Department of Technology, the orange boxes are all the city people will support. From a financial and budget support perspective, as well as our project management office, we'll be providing tool sets and support. The elections department, of course, will be doing use cases and requirements and process definition. And our accessibility staff, I've talked to them recently, and the accessibility department would like to take an active role, and we have ways to make that happen. Then to the left of the diagram, we have the Elections Commission and our TAC. And those teams and folks will help us with policy decisions, understanding budget and schedule, ideas, requirements, alternatives, support, advocacy is going to be very important, and communications. And then you'll see the community is in two groups. One is a whole big group of community engagement. What you'll see there, and I'll explain more about that, is we need a way to allow people to be heard. I think it's very important that people will have an opportunity to express themselves. Some things may be on topic, some things may be off topic, but it is really important that we have the community's voice and support in this. A lot of people have a lot of passion around elections. You just saw it, when I was reminded about it over the last week. So we want to make sure that that's happening in a structured way. So we can say that opportunity has been given to everybody to comment. So it'll be very structured. Then we will have some open source voting working groups. Those groups will be around partnership development and financing. We do know that there are organizations we might want to partner with, and so there's going to be a concerted effort around that. The licensing, terms and conditions for the licensing, software tools and platform, and accessibility will be in one group. We might break accessibility out just because they don't need to come to every conversation around licensing, but we can decide that moving forward. Then we definitely need a group that's focused on cybersecurity and the hardware. Of course, cybersecurity goes into the whole system and business process, but the hardware is a key part of that as well that we need to address. And then external communications. We really need to focus on that and think incredibly creatively about how we get the word out and how we keep the community informed, what types of communication that should be. We'll hear more about that from community engagement, but I think we need to think forward on that and go ahead and have some plans in place. And then our software development consortium will be vendors, partners, all kinds of folks that might want to help participate. So I'll stop and take questions, and then I'd like to share with you a little bit more about the community input facilitation component. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, well, first we'd like to thank you very much for coming, and
Yeah.
I know you don't have to be there, we really appreciate it. I also want to let you know that there are likely going to be many more opportunities to keep talking, so I don't feel like every question is a starting point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we got lots.
Yeah, so
We've got real good friends.
I wrote down,
yes, why don't you,
yeah, I wrote down a few things, and there's one group that I think you could talk to for a thing, but I can tell you that later.
Okay. Did I lose that? Wait a minute, well, let me get it.
All right, yeah.
so for the record, Member Haig arrived at 6:17 p.m. And Member Haig, we're on agenda item number 3.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, there's a fire on the freeway.
On the freeway.
Well, not on the freeway, it was on the side of the freeway.
It's,
More fires.
I came up earlier, so I think I was ahead of that.
That big one is really bad. I'm getting all
Air
kinds of-
quality's been terrible, so. Yeah, so I'll go backwards. and then
Also,
we
for
can
the
talk.
record, Member Phillips is now here. It's 6:18 p.m. Welcome.
Thanks.
And Member Haig just arrived. We're on agenda item number 3.
Yeah, so I'll go backwards through some of
Okay,
my questions,
okay.
because then we can do what we can so far.
Okay.
So on the work groups that you have here, maybe you said it and I missed it, but are these groups that are structured like this TAC, or like CACs, or are they more informal, or internal to the city groups? How
I don't know yet. I think probably I would like consistency. These are long-term groups.
does it?
So it will it will be consistently a group of people. Now, the great question is how many? I want people to stay involved, but I also want to respect people's time. So I'm open to ideas on this. And some may need to meet more frequently than others. And some may, they're all going to stick around for a while. So I don't know, we might limit it to 5 people. I don't know.
Sorry, yeah, I was just wondering how you envision that. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have a solid vision for that, that's
No,
fine. I
I
was just
don't.
wondering if you did.
But they have to be able to make a commitment, that's the point. I mean,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you want to come and talk and share your ideas, that's going to be your opportunity under community engagement. But if you're going to be part of a continuing conversation, and maybe the commitment is going to be for 8 months, so it's 8 meetings once a month, maybe these people need to make a commitment. And I think we'll get that.
So then, earlier on, I think I sort of understand what this means, but to make sure that I do, I would like someone who actually knows what it means to explain it. You mentioned the independent validation and verification resource, and that seems to be a standard thing that that you do, and you said you will probably get an internal resource. Could you explain in like 30 seconds what like IVB is?
Yeah, so what it is someone that is not assigned to the project, is not in control of budget, is not in control of requirements, is not from the elections department. And generally, this is almost like an audit function. So it would come out of the controller's organization, where they are looking for risk. They're looking for, are you meeting budget? Are you on schedule? They'll ask audit kinds of questions about your work plan. And it's just a check so that stakeholders know that there's someone that is doing that independent verification. So they might look at agreements, they might look at contracts. What they're looking for is risk. And so that's kind of their job.
Right, so it's like an outsider to keep you honest, basically.
Yeah, it really is. They're very, very helpful if they're independent. They're very helpful if they're not a consultant trying to get more work out of the city and just comes up with a whole bunch of things they need to help you with. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this can be helpful, or it can just be a drag on the project. But I think if we use the controller's office, that would be very helpful.
Right.
Personally, I think it sounds great that it's convenient if you're looking towards an in-house. That seems
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Yeah, I think it does a couple things. Number one, it gives us that resource that we need. Number two, everybody understands the resource, so it automatically has credibility. And then that's number two. Number three, it helps socialize the project internally in the city, which is important.
So then, I'm almost on 2 more. So you, in the cost estimates thing, you talked about like laying out the costs over a period of 7 years. Is that because you anticipate the construction phase will take that long, or are you
No.
saying we should include ongoing
No,
costs
you have
after
to-
the budget window?
Right, you have to show them what the maintenance cost is over time.
Right.
That's what I'm worried about. So it's too often in technology, everybody gets very excited about the build, but it's not the build, it's not the total cost of ownership, and we absolutely must be in a position to sustain it. So that can look like a lot of different things, but we need to understand that.
Right,
And
so,
then be able to talk to partners about that. If we understand it, then we can talk to partners about that reality.
right, so I guess it's similar to like a lot of governments, like things are marked up for budget in like 10-year terms. Like this will cost this much over 10 years, and it's like the standard
Right. And there's different
window. Is
kinds,
that the kind of,
and there's different kinds of money, right? So there's capital expenditure
yeah,
that is definitely usually for a build. There's
And there's-
capital refresh of hardware, but then it's trying to turn this into an operating expense would help us. So that's something that we need to plan for.
right, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then just finally, and I'll let the other members ask questions. What's the state of play with hiring the product manager?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. I heard there were interviews going on a few weeks ago. And,
There are interviews going on, all right. So,
All
interviews going on, and we're moving forward.
All right.
So, and I think everybody will be very, very pleased. We're very fortunate with a lot of very talented people.
I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, and I know these things don't happen overnight. It's,
We just, so some of, well, our candidates are surprised at our process, always.
no, it's, I've
And
been on
we're the
both sides of
city.
that.
We're the city,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we don't, you know, we are going to vet everybody's college history and their certifications. We're gonna vet their references, we're gonna vet. So I can go through a whole bit. They have to be fingerprinted before we can even make them an offer letter.
Yeah.
So I mean, all that stuff takes time.
Yeah, I have a friend who was hired by the federal government last year, and that was.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so I
like
got
now,
the-
that's a year.
Yeah, I got the inside view of that process. All right.
That's horrible.
Yeah. All right, this me done. I think Tony has some questions.
Yeah, I have a couple. You know, we've talked about the process, and certainly you looked at the Sloan report, didn't you? So one of our objections to the Sloan report was that it was very much a waterfall model, and that, you know, we had spoken about incremental development and agile processes and so on. And as I looked at the approach and methodology here, it wasn't clear to me how the methodology that you've put forth here is in fact different from traditional kinds of waterfall-based developments. And, you know, I mean, I just had a moment to skim this. I haven't been able to dig deeply into it, but could you point us to some things in the model that really reflect the nature of the open source project and the agile approach?
Well, it's going to be a hybrid, so I'm going to just say that right now. Agile is a way of doing software development. It is not necessarily the way to manage a project, and I'm being very precise about that. I feel strongly that a project, especially in government, must have milestones, must have endpoints, must have reach outcomes. It cannot be the never-ending story. I cannot have that conversation with my executive management and get budget for that.
Oh, absolutely, but
So-
you know, what I was looking at was when we get to the stage that that we've decided exactly what we're going to build and we start to build
Right.
it, then the approach may in fact be a series of sprints.
Oh, of
where-
course it will be. Of
Okay.
course it will be. Of
Yeah.
course it will be.
So that didn't jump off the page
No,
at
and
me.
it's not going to at this stage. And also, remember, some things cannot be agile. The architecture, design and engineering that has to go into the hardware and the security has to be in place first. That's not an agile process.
Right.
Depending on how that platform develops, right, or what pieces we can get from other people, or what resources we're going to bring to bear to do the work. You know, if we decide that, oh wow, we found this fabulous team that is going to do this all for free for us, I'm not going to tell them how to do their work. I will set up milestones and gates that they have to get through,
Sure.
and quality and SLA they have to deliver, but how they do their work, I don't care. So I'm not going to dictate form on anything that's a build at this point in time until we have more information.
Right, so you're open to,
Oh, yeah.
as in terms of when we get around to it, identifying open source components like a database management system that's an open source database management system that would become part of the system.
Oh, right.
I mean, the less code we have to write, the better we're all
Well,
going
and
to be.
that's going to be the goal, right? We're going to try to leverage what we can, but remember, it's all got to fit together at the end.
Yeah.
And not have points of failure, and not have security holes, and be something that's sustainable. Just ran into a nasty mess today where there's a piece of software somewhere that belongs to somebody else that I cannot roll forward, and it is creating an enormous problem in the city.
So,
I mean, stuff like that, we can't have components that that we can't manage.
Of course not, but obviously some of the open source applications are really a stack of open source components.
I actually
Um, The other thing I wanted to mention to you, there's an excellent book actually called The Art of Community by Jonah Bacon, and there's also an associated website. And Jonah was really an expert on how to build and sustain communities. And maybe it's a little more open source focused than the term community management perhaps, is more umbrella than it. But that's a resource that I've found useful in numerous projects over the years, and I recommend it. I can send you a link to the website or something if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Could I jump in with a broader question? So this timeline is only taking us through May 2019 or whatever.
Right.
Is this, do you think this is going to be involve an RFP, or do you think it'll be done in-house? Do you know?
No, RFP.
Okay.
We're going to have to. And remember, we've got to push really hard on the business side first, which I think we're prepared to do in a short amount of time.
Okay. And then one other question real quick, because this came up at the last tech meeting. Are there, someone in the audience had asked whether the city has kind of a technical architect tool that could kind of help. Do you have people like that? Yeah, okay, great.
Oh, yes. Do all day.
Can I clarify more your previous answer to his question about which things are RFP? So to clarify, it seems clear to me that the build of a whole system, you would contract out and do an RFP for. Were you saying that you would also do that for some parts of what's shown in this diagram?
No, because that's what I just hired a bunch of people to do.
Right, so this is all, what we're looking at in the space is all in-house, all the
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
up until
yeah.
base and
Actually, that's what I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
So,
thought
I'm
that's
sorry.
what you were asking, and I
Oh,
thought
I'm
she was
sorry.
answering the other questions. so I
Conduct
wanted to
me,
be-
well, that's, okay, so it's the project team that we're going to pull out of DT and the people we're hiring. Then it's also contractors, so as we're doing the engagement meetings with the community, I've hired, when you've met Lorna, so she's already on board, she'll be coming in to help us. So she'll help with the visioning workshops, which is part of the design. She'll help on strategic planning workshops, which is developing the roadmap. And then we'll see what that roadmap needs to be based on what's running in parallel with this, which is trying to build the business case and understand what other resources there are available to us in the U.S. I mean, we've got some big decisions to make.
So just to clarify, so for the business plan you're going to present the city or the
Roadmap.
spring, would
Yeah.
that involve doing an RFP for a consulting firm that might write that for us? Or?
Oh, no. We will write the roadmap. I have the resources to do that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the staff that's being hired can easily do
Great,
that.
okay.
And what we're getting ready for at that point are the budget documents.
Mhm.
Brandon?
Yeah, sorry, this is my first time right here. The business side, this is the pitching, essentially the plan to Coit, who actually
No.
is?
So the business plan will be more around a strategy first.
Okay.
So it's about understanding who our partners are going to be. So understanding what's available out in the world in terms of components and code and application that we can use. You all are up, I think, on the latest with LA. Some of that came as a surprise to me. I had a totally different view of that, but I think we need to understand that more. Then didn't you all see, I should have sent it to you, maybe you sent it to me. The smartphone app, did you see that?
We've talked about this stuff.
There's a smart, they used it actually this election for overseas people voting, and it's with blockchain. So I went, ooh, let's take a look at that. So I mean, there's lots of stuff we could look at in terms of who's got what does it mean, do we like it, do we not like it, does it fit with our security plan, does it fit with our architecture? Oh, and by the way, you know, what are we gonna do about Kubernetes? You know, so we got a lot of things to think about. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
So that's, I know it sounds big right now, but we'll start clicking things off, and either there'll be an opportunity or they won't. And if they're an opportunity, how much? Does it come with money? Does it come with resource? Are there strings attached to it? So, you know, every opportunity you have to evaluate it a little bit independently, and I'll keep y'all up to date on that.
Okay, so this is coalition building inside existing like city resources or resources?
No, this
that-
is across the country.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I hope I'm not going to repeat the question,
Oh, go ahead.
but I got a couple issues. One of our recommendations is to subdivide the project into individual components that can be developed more or less independently and staged. So is that part of your plan?
Well, and here's what's interesting about this. I understand that, and I agree with it, but I also know that if we could get somebody to do this for us in 6 months, why would we not do that? So until we've done the universe of partners and have either ruled them in or ruled them out, or they've ruled us in or out, and I'm talking about the Linux Foundation and those sorts of things, if that's an opportunity for us, it kind of changes how we're going to think about this. It changes how what we would want to do, what we would want from our partner. So kind of have to wait and see. But I hear you, and I'm with you. I want you to know that we won't really know until we see how the business side's going to work out a little bit.
So I think also part of it's in some ways an architectural
It is,
decision.
absolutely too.
So like for example, I looked at the OpenCount software, and it's just one monolithic application. So it's not easy to if there's a problem with one part of it, I mean, first of all, it's hard to even figure out because it's all one giant monolithic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to test, and I think there's also some integrity issues because you don't have intermediate data files that you can digitally sign and track changes to and all that. So it's not necessarily that one company could do the whole thing, but if they do the whole thing, are they going to divide things up in a way that allows later somebody to say, oh, this piece is causing us problems, like you were saying with
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
example app, that's loading, can you take that out, replace that with something different, or if that is falling behind the schedule, can you somehow, would you do that?
Absolutely.
So that's, I think, the main
I agree with
main
you.
issue.
A modular build is a much safer development. Now, what it does introduce, unfortunately, is possibly latency in the application, and elections have to go fast, or points of failure, or points of security. So as long as we address that well, and there are ways to do it, with logging, with alerting, there's all kinds of things, but it's another superstructure underneath the application with the modules that sit on top that is doing that hub kind of work.
Right.
But so anyway.
So another
Yeah,
example
I get
is
that.
CalVoter and VoteCal, which I don't know if you're familiar with that. I think the state government did that to centralize all the voter registration information with all the counties, and they built one giant monolithic master database, and it completely failed. I think they spent $200 million or something.
Oh!
And then pulled the plug and started over.
Oh!
So, and it was like, maybe you know the details of that, but It's a good example of like
What not to do.
what not to do, and it involved election data, which I've been working with, so it's kind of interesting that
Yeah, wow.
that something like that could be that expensive and such a massive failure.
So there's a really interesting architectural problem, because if you use a database or some other kind of data sharing between these subsystems,
Right.
then everything gets jumbled together. And if you clean up your API structure or your message passing or something, you get a much more architecturally clean thing, but with the possibility of the overhead for message passing
Right, well-
or passing parameters and
But
so on.
the problem is really a data flow problem, not a
Yes.
data
This is
centralization.
Exactly.
limited to-
That's exactly right.
So, okay.
So I'm
Exactly.
gonna-
Anyway, just,
I totally get it.
these
I
are sort
totally
of
get
just
it.
examples
gonna-
in support of sort of modular.
Yeah, I totally get it, and I agree.
So you made a comment about the Linux Foundation a moment
Mhm.
ago, and I mean, you know, I've known the people there for a long time. They're all about, you know, serving as an umbrella organization for a bunch of different
Mhm.
projects. They don't do any projects specifically for anyone
Right.
else.
Right.
So, yeah, it wasn't clear to me what you saw the role of an organization like the Linux Foundation be.
Well, I've talked to their executive president, Jim Cohn, already.
To
and-
Jim.
And talked to them about the project. So they see some possibility, so I need to get back with, I haven't not had time to do the right type of briefing for them. And so it has to be perfect out of the gate, because we want to put our best foot forward. And so I'm waiting for our project team to get in place, and then we'll put the right documents together and make a pitch. And they'll either say yes, or they'll say no.
But they don't do development. This
Well,
is
but
my
their
point.
members do. Their members do.
Right.
And their members take on projects, and that's what we would be hoping we could attract as one of their members. And we would need to, of course, evaluate that opportunity and say, how will that work with us?
So one of the things you might do is consider going to the open source summit that they run, which is March 11th to 13th in Half Moon Bay.
Oh, I'll go there.
Then you get to talk to many of the groups that do that kind of work.
Well, that's exactly what we need to do. By that time, we'll be well on our way by then, let's hope.
So this is kind of related, but Director Terrell, would you be interested in knowing the names of more like organizations
Yes.
for this community?
This is my
engagement?
ask for, oh, I'm sorry.
I will email you one.
This is my ask, so just not to back up, but to go where I was going to go. So we are already starting to plan the workshop. I was hoping to pull the first one off in December, and I just don't think we can do it. I think it's too fast, but we are scheduling for January now with a consultant. And so I just received this proposal, and I haven't even read it yet, about what the first workshop, what the engagement will be. We have two or three, we have a number scheduled. So I really need names. I need as many listservs and email that you can possibly come up with, because we'll blast out to everyone, every talk, and I'll pull some from the emerging technologies work group as well. So
We could probably just develop a consolidated list.
if you all could do that, oh my gosh, it would be just a huge help.
Another thing that you could do is to create a project on GitHub. And you know,
I may have to do it
even as
a
a
different way, but yeah.
But even as a way to publish the planning documents to keep everything transparent, and then
Yeah.
people who are interested in voting and your project would be able to go there, and you'd be able to add interested people.
So that was actually my second question, was like, how do you plan on engaging with the public? I mean, there's that sort of box there in my mind. But
Well, and what's interesting about this is the city has a way of doing this. So I kind of have to follow the way the city does it, which is normally with a website. And we post all the documents there, and I can, you know, I have to follow the pattern that they've already established. So, but it has the alerts, it has the emails that go out, it has the list, so that's what we're doing.
So you're, I mean, yeah, so I was sort of asking, are you planning on, you know,
Yeah.
like putting all the work in progress and plans, sort
On
of
the
making
website.
them available to the public and then soliciting feedback,
Yes.
comments from the public? As
Right.
that's kind of like how
That's how this
community
works.
involvement would work,
Yes.
as opposed to like LA, I guess, did everything and then at the end said, okay, here it is.
Well, and I think what's interesting is we will get a large number of people. So I know y'all are kind of used to working with each other. There's going to be a lot of people there. And then there may be people that comment on the documents online or what have you. So, but we'll get through it. But it's important. It's an important step.
But that's one of those places where you need a community manager because somebody will write obscenities about the document. No, seriously, I mean, you know, somebody has to moderate the site. You know, and that's one of the things that a good community manager does.
Yeah, well, that's I have people who do that.
Okay, let's pause for a moment just to take public comment. So, any members of the public?
Yeah. My name is David Carey. I'll note that this month, November, marks the 3-year anniversary of the Elections Commission adopting their open source voting system resolution. And it's, for me, it's both kind of frustrating that more progress hasn't been made on this project, particularly in the funded area of the development. The OSVTAC has been a real bright spot in terms of what volunteers have been doing. But it's also great to see, you know, the real presence from the Department of Technology and the efforts being made to help turn things around from my perspective and really get things going. So that's I'm excited about those prospects. In the project plan that reviewed, the independent verification verification role, I think it is really important to make sure that whoever that is has a good understanding of some of the more modern approaches to doing projects like this, agile development, understanding open source, so that plans are not evaluated in terms of kind of an old school perspective.
No, I-
And that role doesn't start pulling things back in the rut that keep this project from performing as well as it can. I think it is valuable to set some specific kind of goals for the project, intermediate goals, in terms of actually delivering some useful functionality in an elections environment. And I'll suggest that by 2020 that we really ought to have some functionality for handling vote-by-mail ballots at a central location, for piloting purposes. And I think it's entirely realistic to have some sort of component available for piloting even in 2019. And setting those goals, I think, will help give some direction and help prioritize, because I don't think we're going to have all the answers until we actually start doing some of the stuff. And in terms of partners and other people from outside the city being involved in this, a lot of them are going to have to see some successes before they're going to want to get involved in a serious way. And so showing successes, which have been, in my sense, really lacking so far, is real critical. And having something, that doesn't mean that you don't spend some time while you're pursuing some of those smaller intermediate specific goals, that you don't spend time following leads on some of the bigger picture. But as you go, the answers will change. We're not going to get everything all at once, and so it's important to move forward in that regard. I guess one of the questions I'd have for the Director Jarrell is what kind of opportunities the Department of Technology had for observing election processes here in this current election, and to what extent that's still an opportunity to some extent.
Oh,
So
we can definitely do that. And I have observed elections before. I'm always on the floor.
Yeah.
Because it's usually my system, and it's, I'm watching to make sure it's staying up and we don't have any problems. And this one we did well. We ended up with no problems with our results posting because the architecture's not great on it. So, case in point. But we're gonna fix it over time. I can't fix it right now. So, yeah, that's always good. And I think the new people that are joining us need to see it as well.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carey. So, does anyone have any remaining questions? Like I said, we're going to have plenty of opportunities in the future to keep this conversation going. Anyone else? Okay, well, Director Jarrell, I just want to thank you again very much for
You're very
taking the
welcome.
time.
You're very welcome.
It's good to meet you.
Me too.
Okay, so,
Do you want to do it?
what's that?
Just the introduction, because,
We'll do that, we'll do that.
Okay.
So, remember item?
Item 4.
Okay, next item.
Item 4, approval of minutes of previous meeting. Discussion and possible action to approve minutes for the October 11th, 2018 committee meeting.
Okay, so this draft minutes were prepared very late, but so if people feel it's premature to vote on these, that's fine, we can put it off to the next meeting. But I did review these, so
Why does it say two different places that I left?
so
Did it? I didn't.
Is there a process?
well, so the reason I did that was because that way the attendance information is in the first section, because we have to record early departures, but also that way we can see like where in the discussion did you leave.
All right.
So that's.
Oh, I thought this was so good, but I found a typo. The first sentence under item 9, where Chris and I were able to observe the logic.
Able.
Yeah.
Got it.
That looks good to me. I came in as human service last time.
People need more time? Would someone like to make a motion to approve
Move that we approve, is that correction?
I'll second that.
Okay. Then a public comment? Seeing none? Any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay, Secretary Chiang?
Chair Giordani.
Yes?
Giordani, yes. Member Hague.
Yes.
Hague, yes. Member Vidal.
Yes.
Vidal, yes. Member Phillips.
Yeah.
Phillips, yes. Member Wasserman.
Yes.
Wasserman, yes. And unanimously Carried.
Okay, let's move on to the next item.
Item 5, administration, discussion of possible action regarding administrative issues, including but not limited to attendance at election commission meetings by committee members, the committee's website, and the committee's written reports to the commission.
Okay, so let's, on this item, we'll start off covering what we missed in the roll call. So we do have a new member today, member Brandon Phillips. And so at the last commission meeting, the commission voted unanimously to appoint Brandon, and there were 7 applicants. So we're very happy to have you and to bring up our membership up to 5 again. Did you want to kind of say a few words about yourself and your background and your interest in the committee?
Sure. So, yeah, Brandon Phillips. So I've been involved in open source for quite some time in some of the probably largest open source projects that exist in the world. I worked on Linux kernel for quite some time. And most recently, I was a founding member of a couple of projects, Kubernetes, and a database that underpins Kubernetes called etcd, in my role as CTO and co-founder of a company called CoreOS. I also sit on the governing board of things like Linux Foundation. So, yeah, my entire career essentially I've been either deeply involved in open source or building businesses around open source. And my interest in voting is really, I think it's an interesting technological problem, and then to try to get an understanding and grasp of the scope and scale of this, I was recently as of Tuesday, an inspector at a polling station in San Francisco, where I oversaw and kind of the entire process.
Great. We'll get a chance to talk about that in the next one.
So you live in San Francisco?
Yeah, in Castro.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I have a question. So you said you're on the governing board of the Linux Foundation. How does that work?
On the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is probably the largest revenue generating part of the Linux Foundation.
Is that something that you were elected to or appointed to, or how big is that?
I was elected to it. The annual budget is around $20 million. And I represent developers as my governing board seat. There's 2 developer seats. I represent developers on that seat.
Okay. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Welcome.
Thanks.
We've been in touch before at some event or something.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview Brandon. So, okay, so let's move on to the administrative stuff here. So the first thing is scheduling our next meeting. And Secretary Chan.
Well, your next meeting is scheduled on the first Thursday, which would be, well, the second Thursday, I'm sorry, December 13th.
Okay.
So wait, Thursday, right?
It is.
Is this something that works for people?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That will be at 6, and I have a flight leaving at 6:50 that day.
Yeah, there's a major Linux Foundation conference I have to attend.
Okay, what about, should we go for the week before that, or
So like a Thursday, but the week earlier?
On the
Yeah.
6th.
6th,
That's fine.
It works for me.
I can do the 6th.
I think that should be okay.
Okay, great, let's do the 6th then. And then the next item is, assuming we can get a room, I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
work something out. The next thing is our next commission meeting. We need to have one of us attend, other than myself.
The night before Thanksgiving.
I could
21st.
probably do that.
Okay.
I'll definitely be in town. The only question is whether I have a conflicting event. Although I guess I'm organizing this event, so I can just move it. And people only started asking me today if it's going to be on the 21st or not. So I guess I can just say no. I'm going to host it. I'm going to hold another day.
November 21st,
Yeah.
the day before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's when the election commission meeting is.
All right.
Not a good time to hold an event.
No,
Well, that's why you sent the forwarding to the meeting, right? I don't have to go anywhere next
Okay,
week.
so you say you can do it?
Yeah, I can do 20, yeah.
Okay, we're okay with that. Okay, well, thank you.
And then our meetings will be the 6th.
Yeah, so what we, the commission asks that at least one TAC member other than the chair kind of give a little report just for a couple minutes.
so we need to think about December 19th is the election commission meeting then.
On the December 19th, yeah, as far as I know, they're going to meet.
Well, I won't be here.
Yeah, well, we don't have to do that.
I'm happy, but I'm also happy to like preemptively take November so that I can feel good about not doing December.
Okay. I figure I don't have to do it till like February or so, because
You did it a bunch of times when I was out.
Okay, so like our website, we don't really have any changes to that. We do need to get your information up there.
Yeah, sorry.
And I had promised Chris that I would update the repository with stuff that we approved since March, I think.
Yeah,
Which I
It's not
said I was
a whole
going
lot.
to do, and then election day happened, and I like didn't sleep for 2 days, so
okay,
it'll eventually happen when I recover.
okay. All right, so let's take public comment on this item.
David Carey here again. As I said earlier, this committee has really been one of the bright spots in this overall effort. And it's largely because there are just some really bright and talented people sitting here, really dedicated people that are working hard to make this all happen. One of the things, I don't know if maybe you've taken care of this already, but with the grand jury report, there were some items that I think particularly in terms of publishing things on the website about that I think things may have at least been proposed that OSVTAC do. And are you confident that that's all being handled in the appropriate time frame is one thing I would kind of raise. So.
Were you speaking of more than just the project page, or?
I just remember that there was one item in that said that, you know, there ought to be kind of a portal for the project, and that there was at least at some point some talk that OSVTAC might do that at least on an interim basis, and just kind of making sure that nothing's being dropped there. It's worthwhile double checking.
Yes, so actually, we've got this up here. Tony, do I have to do anything to activate this?
It was on a little while ago, maybe.
Yeah, it
just
was on.
yeah, it wakes up at some point.
Turn the power on.
What do I have to touch to leave it up?
No, the power should be on.
Well, the TV might have turned off if there's no.
I mean, which day did we do?
I don't know.
Well, Tony was the one that got it going, so.
All right, now I'm the domain
The
expert.
computer,
I don't know.
Press the red button.
it doesn't have any input.
Red button is
Red
the
pill.
power.
You just don't have to start over.
There we are, HDMI 1 PC.
I think you need to touch the
Maybe you have to
keyboard.
browse again.
pin.
Oh, here we go.
Ta-da!
Okay, so this is a question that Mr. Carey asked about. So we do have this new project page here, and this was to satisfy the civil grand juries, and it's basically a list of all the reports and so on that going all the way back to 2008. So this should satisfy what they're asking about. And then again, if any of you ever notice something that's not up there, then just let me know. We can add that.
This went up a few months ago.
Yeah, this went up a few months ago. They had requested that it be done by October 1st, and we met that. Okay, so anything else on number 5 before we move on to the member reports? Okay, let's move on to number 6.
Number 6, member reports. Member reports on committee-related activities not covered by another item on this agenda, including but not limited to the last Elections Commission meeting, Department of Elections progress, research findings, conferences, and news reports.
Okay, so who would like to start?
I can start. I was at the last Elections Commission meeting. I don't remember the open source voting item that well anymore, and that might be because of sleep deprived, so I might have to do my best to remember more stuff than I do. But Director Gerald from the Department of Technology gave a presentation similar to, with slides that were almost the same as the one that she gave here, but obviously speaking to a very different kind of audience. So she gave a presentation, and there were some questions there, and some of the, we reviewed a different version of those slides at our TAC meeting as well. And one of the things that I was impressed with is like I called out some things that were that seemed off in those slides, and they were fixed when she presented them to the commission a week later. So Chris got that to her, and she fixed it promptly, and I was very happy to see that. And some of the questions I asked her were also based on things the commissioners asked her at the time. Other than that, I think most of the meeting was Chris talked to the applicants for the vacancy, and the commission ending up voting to appoint Brandon. And I think that was most of it, right? I don't think they got.
There were even a
substantive-
couple applicants endorsed Brandon.
Yes, one of the applicant after, so Brandon's information was missing from the pre-published agenda packet. Every other applicant's information is there, so I didn't actually know that he existed until that was clarified, and I actually stood at the monitor like reading his resume. And after this became apparent, one of the people who had applied in the public comment period actually went up and said, "You should not appoint me, you should appoint him." Like, this person is simply more qualified to be on this committee than I am. So yeah, that was nice to see.
And you also said some.
And I also said yeah, because I had no idea that you were on there at all. I didn't know who you were, but I was like, wait, I know what Kubernetes and SED are. So I was like, yeah, this person is probably more qualified to be in the committee than I am. So y'all should appoint him, and that's what I did. But I don't remember much substantive discussion around what was just voting other than those procedural things and the stuff.
I can't remember either. I think it was mostly, well, the Director Terrell had.
Yeah, Director Jarrell's presentation, there were some questions, and I think Commissioner Donaldson also asked a question around, or President Donaldson, I should say, also asked a question around like because the terminology that's used for like that first those phases of lead up to May 2019 includes words like build, and he's like, just to be clear, when you say build, you mean build a report, right? Not build software. So some of my questions today were also informed by like having seen those changes.
Oh yeah, one thing we learned at the meeting was that the reason that the Dominion staff.
Oh yeah.
You want to say what that was?
Yes, so last month I reported that I had gone to the observation opportunities for the logic and accuracy testing for the machines. It happens before election day. And I mentioned being surprised that there was a Dominion staff person performing most of the tests. And there was like a city person watching them, but they weren't watching them all the time, and they signed off on some things. But mostly my reaction was like, why is there a person from the vendor even there at all to do that? When the Department of Elections has staff that can just do this. And so Chris asked that question of Director Arns, and he said that when they first got the contract with Dominion 10 years ago, they didn't have the staff capacity, and so it was in the contract. And now they're paying for it, so they might as well get it. That was the sort of short answer. Because I was like, from like a sort of security-ish perspective of verifying it seems kind of fishy that like anyone from the main is on site at all. Like they're testing their own system, what's going on. But he was like, yeah, we have city staff watching them, but mostly we're just like, we're already paying for the test, so we might as well.
Just so I understand, what part of the system is Dominion?
Okay, so Dominion, it's all the, so the thing that I went to was the testing for the ballot scanners.
He's asking a more general question. So Dominion is the company that sells the system that the open source voting system is going to replace.
I see.
So it's the voting system responsible for counting ballots.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so it's the Insight machine that if you were an inspector, you will set up like the one that scans ballots. The Edge machine that does the accessible voting. And then they have machines called 400C machines that are high volume scanners that are in the basement downstairs that are counting about 7,000 ballots a day right now for the voting count. So what I went to was the testing for the Insight machines, where they have a stack of prepared ballots, and they feed them to the machine and then check the results is right. And so mostly they have a Dominion guy there, just like they stack a ballot, like feeds it through, And yeah, my sort of response to that was like, if these machines are easy to use, why isn't like a city person doing that? And apparently it was like 10 years ago, they didn't have the bandwidth, they decided to pay for it, and now they're still paying for it, so then might as well use it.
Understood.
Because I thought it was really weird, and it turned out to be something super high about that.
Got it. Makes sense.
And then some random things that I've got for myself personally. I was a poll worker in June, but I was not a poll worker this year. But that meant that I was actually watching the results come out on the website, and as Director Drell alluded to, that went pretty well. The first results report was very slightly late, but less than 10 minutes. It wasn't very bad.
What time?
I forget exactly what time, but it was supposed to come out at 8:45,
Okay.
and it was like almost 8:55, I think.
That's,
Which, you know, if you're the person that wrote the script to like pull it every second until it stops fluorophorium, starting at 8:40, then it feels a lot longer than it actually is. Reports 2 and 3 actually came out early, up to 5 minutes early. And the final report was even later than it was in June.
it was like 1:30.
It was 1 a.m. Yeah. I think in June it was like right after midnight, and that sort of felt late. So I don't know what was happening today, but yeah, everything seems to work fine with the technology. They've been putting up press releases about how many ballots are still to be counted. So it looks like everything is going about as well as it went in June, and possibly a little bit better. So that we see that. And in that context, every time there's an election in the U.S., there's people on Twitter complaining about how, like, why doesn't the U.S. just like count ballots by hand? Why are there all these machines? And it's starting to now be the case that some people are responding to this with like links to my presentation, where I explain why we do this. So one person who did that said that he had recently voted in Vancouver, and that they also have complex ballots there, but they have the QR code app where like you have a mobile app where you fill out your ballot on your phone. It generates a QR code, you scan it at a ballot printer at a precinct, and it prints out the ballot that you verify and then put into a scanner. So that sounds somewhat similar to like what I think New Hampshire really has this feature. But it's a feature that we've discussed before, and I think that like the Travis County.
That's what LA County is. Like,
Well, it was the, what's his name, Juan?
Gilbert.
Yeah,
Gilbert.
his system, that's the one New Hampshire is using.
Right.
It's derived from that, so they have that ability. And
Okay.
I think maybe the new LA system might have that capability as well.
So I was not aware that the capability like that was being used in Vancouver. So now I know that, and now you know too. And also, like, having looked at the results returns, I look forward to a future where we have CVR data for more stuff. We have CVRs for RCV races now, but for like, you know, for yes, no propositions, it doesn't make much sense, or it doesn't add much, but like, you're not
Unless
able
you see
to.
correlations.
Yeah, if you wanted to see correlations across propositions, I guess.
Sorry, what's CVR?
CVR is a cast vote record, so it's like for ranked choice races,
Yeah.
there's a data dump that they publish, where it's like, on this ballot, they voted this person number 1, this person number 2, this person number 3. And so then you can download the data, rerun the RCV algorithm yourself, say like, okay, but like, the people who voted for this person number 1, what was the distribution of number 2s, and you can go grading that kind of stuff. But for like school board, for example, that's a vote for 3 race. You can't do similar breakdowns there. You can't say like, people who voted for this person for school board will also get choose. That's not data that you can get. And I look forward to a future with sort of more capable election systems where we can gather the kind of data. But also it's great that it's there for RCV because it's a wealth of information.
So just to elaborate on that, so
Yeah, I'm
usually
done.
cast vote record is a digital representation of the ballot selections. There's also a legal definition of the word paper cast vote record, which is like the computer printout that's on the electronic machines. So it's not a ballot like it's, you know, that has like all your choices that you get to select, but it's like a different representation of the choices, but it's made on paper.
And that's not so I have.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
So I just got done, I wrote 35 different scanners for election converting, downloading and converting election results. I can tell you all kinds of horror stories about
Why
it.
don't you explain what you're doing this for? Just-
Oh, okay, so I've worked for the League of Women Voters since 1996 on a non-profit, non-partisan voter information website. So we get data from quite a lot of counties, I guess at least 35 in California. And we get data from election officials, including San Francisco. So we convert that data so voters can type in their address, find out what precinct they're on, what their ballot type is, and so they can see their ballot selections, and we point them to polling place locations, and then after the election, it shows election results, and it'll show it just for the ones that you voted on. So I have to get data from counties in the original, whatever can be exported from their election management systems. And then almost no counties make computer-friendly election results available. So I have to write scanners that pretend they're human and read web pages or PDF files, which sometimes are scrambled into columns, so I have to untangle all of that. So, and then they change the URL, so it's like a game of whack-a-mole. So you're trying to find where the URLs, and then they change the, like one county had a misconfigured HTTPS server. Then they changed servers, and the data came in a different format. So it's, and a lot of counties, they don't release any data until after 8 o'clock. So I have to start writing software at 8 p.m. to try to convert stuff, so.
This is where like a zero report helps.
Right.
Yeah, so you can find out before.
Now, what's interesting is I found, several things, like we couldn't get data on poll locations from counties. But the state government already collects the information for all counties. And there's something called a statewide database, but it's not a publicly
Yeah,
accessible
that's
database.
what
That was in the minutes, yeah. The other thing, because they're collecting real-time updates of state-level contests, they get the data dump from all the counties. They collect it, they extract out the pieces that they need, and then they throw it away. So it would be a public benefit if they made that available as an electronic record. Both for for certain consumers that need it, like there was, I think on the state election return email, there were like 250 people on that list of people using state election returns. So like all the newspapers, many nonprofit sites, a lot of the campaign funding information websites like Open Secrets, Google and Microsoft all have websites that make use of this data. So yeah, so there's a lot of need, but it hasn't kind of gotten into the public mind that computer-friendly data, election data, is important.
And we don't even do that in San Francisco, do we? Like
San Francisco does better than most, but
it's not.
and I think do they make the WinEDS files available?
Well,
I guess not.
Well,
I think
limited
this-
selection, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's not really, that's more raw data. And
It's not really designed for.
I noticed that the California statewide sites was lagging on it was pretty slow to pick up the SF results.
oh, really?
And so like the New York Times, for example, follows that. So if you were looking at the New York Times website for they had numbers on almost all the assembly districts, but 17 and 19, which are mostly in San Francisco. Those were at 0 versus 0 until 9 or 10 p.m.
Oh.
An hour after San Francisco had published results for those races. And parts of those districts are in San Mateo County, but not very much of them. A lot of major news outlets in the state of California itself are still showing them as no results reported at all.
I don't know, maybe there's some issue with San Francisco uploading their data into the state. I mean, normally I wasn't watching it because I was busy writing, trying to get writing software, and then I have a team of people reading the results to check them to find problems for me to investigate. But normally the state updates every few minutes, every 10 minutes or something like that. So it does give a county breakdown, although
Yeah.
I'm not really looking at that.
All right, okay, is there other things to report and all?
Other than on the other agenda items.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I had a question. In the minutes, I guess I brought up an issue, like, is there any documentation
Well,
that we can have access
we'll
to?
get to that.
Okay.
Well, so I'll just answer you now. So I actually was sort of conflicted on this, and maybe all of you have opinions, but I'm a little bit wary of, like, if we're getting very detailed information about the current system, like, we don't want to be, like, designing the system to, like, match what some other manufacturer produced.
Well, also, we don't want to look at things that have non-disclosure agreements that could cause intellectual property.
Well, but there could even be patent issues too, like,
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
do we want to be, like, if,
You're saying we might want to clean room ourselves just relatively, or?
yeah, kind of, but I guess I was wanting more information, like, why do you want the manuals? Like, what is it?
Just, I guess, just to educate myself, I'm not the kind of person that falls into the trap of reading one thing and then doing it.
Well, no, but it's more like when, if you can say I've never looked at the manuals, it's just, you can't, once you read something, you can't really forget it.
Yeah.
So it's, you have to clean your room. What do people
I
feel?
mean, maybe the intellectual property issue is legitimate. I'm just saying maybe the intellectual property issue is a legitimate.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
unless
too.
if you're blocked by something, you could talk about it, but, I mean,
No, it's more just to expand my horizons.
yeah.
In that case, if you feel there's risk, then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want it to be like, we're gonna use the WinADS manuals as like the template for designing them. Okay, so, yeah, but I did get the scanned PDFs, the blanks. for you.
Right, that's, well,
Yeah.
we can talk about that.
Okay, so, anyone else you wanna talk about what you did?
Oh, well, I went to India and China, and India was strictly vacation, but China, I was one of the keynotes for the China Open Source Conference, and I think I was there to represent the Open Source Initiative, because I was for 6 years the director, and so nobody else wanted to go, so they said, well, let's send Tony. So in addition to giving my talk, which was pretty general about open source, there was an event to celebrate 20 years of the Apache Software Foundation and 20 years of the Open Source Initiative. The posters on the wall, talks, signed various things, and toasted. So I played that role, and then participated also in an executive workshop, which was an interesting mix of open source leaders from various well-known Chinese tech companies, and some of the other visitors, such as Matt Friedman, who's going to be the new CEO of GitHub. So it was a good chance to meet and chat with a few people.
Did you tell them about the open source voting project?
I did. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion back and forth about it, but I certainly did mention it in passing.
Actually, GitHub's former CEO wrote a letter supporting the project a few years ago.
Chris?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah. Okay, well, great.
I certainly know how to reach Matt. It's not at Microsoft.com, so you can, plug him in.
Did you want to say anything, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so something else. So the questions we came up with, the 5 questions, I emailed those to the director after our meeting. So she replied back, those are great questions. And then at the commission meeting, I said that we had created these questions, but I didn't include them in the packet. So that way, just to make it not so obvious to applicants what the questions were in advance. And then without seeing the questions, the commission kind of said, we support these questions, just, I guess, in the strength of our membership. So,
Sorry, what questions?
these are 5 questions we came up with at the last meeting to ask candidates for the job project managers. And after the position is hired, I'll post those on our website so people can see. I was also polling place inspector. This was number 20 for me.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was a long day. I had 3 clerks. But actually, at the end of the day, I had the biggest discrepancy I've ever had. Normally, I've only had between 0 and 2 ballots off, but I was 10 off. And so I learned a couple kind of different cases that had never come up before. One was that we had voided some vote by mail ballots that someone had left out, and that caused our numbers to be off.
So could you explain what ballot off means and, how do you compute it?
Yeah, so there are 2 numbers that you need to reconcile. One is how many blank ballots do they give you, and then how many ballots can you account for at the end of the day.
So do the blank ballots have serial numbers? Or do you physically count them?
You count them, yeah. So blank ballots at the beginning of the day needs to be equal to the number of blank ballots you have left at the end of the day, plus
All voted ballots.
all voted ballots we find, voted or voided ballots that you find in various places. But it sounded like you had someone took their vote by mail ballot out of the envelope and then left it around in the precinct and you voided it and put it in the red box.
Well, so the rule is that they only have to turn in their envelope to trade in their vote, and sometimes they want to use the ballots as a reference.
Oh.
And then
And they left them around.
when we voided those vote by mail ballots, it contributed towards.
Right, so you were over.
Oh, so it was counted as a voided ballot
Yeah.
as opposed to an exchange ballot?
Yeah, so something like that.
Right.
And then something else I want to mention is that, we talked about activities that we can observe. There's going to be the random selection happening in maybe like a week or so, and I can send an email to all of you when that's announced. And it usually happens at like 10 in the morning, and you can see them roll the dice to select the precincts.
I think isn't it like screencast live?
Yeah, it is.
You can watch that web
But you
stream.
don't get to roll.
No, it could be all fake anyway, so I can see here.
The
That's why you go.
deep fake.
Is it downstairs?
Yeah.
They need to show the current Bitcoin hash or something on
Yeah,
the
right.
video so that you know it's that.
So on Monday, I participated in a panel discussion that was hosted downtown by it was called Context Conversations. And the other panelist, his name was Benedita, and he was the creator of the Helios online voting system. And he has a PhD from MIT. His dissertation was on cryptography and voting. But he actually announced that he's forming a nonprofit to build conventional paper ballot voting systems that are open source, kind of like what San Francisco wants to build.
Yeah, the open source initiative uses Helios for its director voting.
Yeah, so Ben is not, he wants to build a paper ballot system, and his nonprofit is called Voting Works.
Where is he?
Well, he lives in Redwood City, but he used to work in San Francisco. He was working on Clever.
So his organization is going to be somewhere close to here?
Like in Bay Area or Redwood City.
I think virtual.
Yeah,
Oh, so does he have a website?
yeah, it's voting.works.
Votingworks.org?
Voting.works.
Oh, voting.works. Oh.
Love it.
Yeah, so, but it was good. That was recorded on video. So I talked about the open source voting project.
That's great.
Okay, I think that covers it for me. Let's take public comment.
You've talked about this election here in San Francisco. I think for me, one of the things in the context of this project that's kind of stands out for me is that we've had an election in which nobody knows how votes got counted, in large part because it's secret source the secret source nature of the voting system is a big contributor to that. And it's not like it has a great track record either, because there are times when it produces wrong answers, times when the Department of Elections has certified wrong vote totals. And so that's kind of a track record that says that, and when you look at those failures, you go back and look at what went wrong, and in all the cases I'm aware of, it's the poor quality of design and testing and buggy voting system software is at the core of the problems. For me, it's a good example of why it's one of the key areas in which this open source voting system project offers some opportunities for benefits, and it is also an example for me of why I think it's important to not get too distracted about all the neat bells and whistles that you might be able to hang on this, and the importance and priority of focusing on getting a core system up and running and demonstrating that it's working, and then looking for opportunities as more jurisdictions are interested in it, of adding bells and whistles as you go from there.
So to respond to that, the highlights of what I've heard about so far has been in, I think, Broward County in Florida. It sounds like they have paper there, because they were talking about scanners, but there's a legal challenge there going on because in Broward County's returns, the number of votes, there are more undervotes for senator than any other statewide office, including superintendent of public instruction and other obscure state offices. So the people suing there are alleging that the scanners must have missed votes for Senate there, because there's no other county where that happened. Like in every county, governor and senator have the fewest undervotes, and everything else is.
But they have paper ballots that can be.
It sounds like they have paper ballots because they were talking about scanners. In Texas, they don't, I don't think, and they had issues with in the early voting phase as well, with where you would hit the straight ticket button for a particular party, and then it still takes you through all the screens, but just with the candidate that party is pre-selected, so you can deviate from your straight ticket where you want to. And so people observed that in those screens, the correct Senate candidate was selected, but then when they got to the final confirmation screen, it would, the vote for a Senate would be wrong. So it would say like straight ticket Democratic Party, Senate Ted Cruz, or like straight ticket Republican Party, Senate blank, and stuff like that. And some of those, a lot of people caught it, and then you can go back and fix it. But some people voted that, and then they can't. There's nothing you can do.
I think it was sort of like some kind of gross, high-level concurrency thing where they clicked OK, but then there's a few seconds where if you touch the dial, it'll change.
Yeah, so the manufacturer is trying to blame it on voter error, but I think that's dumb. Excuse me. If you hit if the machine is capable of producing an output that says you voted the straight Democratic ticket and your choice of senator was Ted Cruz, or the reverse of that, then something is wrong with the software.
Okay.
But so those are sort of the most relevant cases that I've heard of, like voting system related or election irregularities in other states.
Yeah. Okay. So. Anything else before we move on to the next item? Okay, let's move on to number
7. Item 7, contributor license agreements, CLAs, for OSVTAC projects. Discussion and possible action regarding contributor license agreements, CLAs, for contributing to OSVTAC projects.
Okay, so this is more for your benefit, Brandon, but TAC, we have a few kind of like budding projects that we're starting to work on GitHub, and we don't really have a way of accepting contributions from the public. We haven't really talked a whole lot about it, so this is sort of my first discussion having. And so Member Cattell, do you want to talk about the research you did?
Yeah, so because we got, after I gave my presentation in September, we got an inquiry by email about if someone wanted to contribute to the project we already started. And Chris said, we're not really up to do that right now, so we discussed a little bit in the previous meeting. And Chris asked me to throw something together, even just as a draft to serve as like a starting point for discussion. And that's definitely what this is intended to be. We don't have to adopt it. I just wanted to do something. So Tony had mentioned, the first page is like the copy of the email that I sent to Chris accompanying this, and I'll just like the highlights of that are, Tony had mentioned the FASI CLA as a possible CLA to use. I looked at it, and I looked at some blog posts that people whose opinions I respect have written about various CLAs, including the Apache canonical ones and like the previous canonical one versus the current one. The Apache CLA is a pretty simple one, and I like it for that reason, but it allows the entity that you're agreeing with as a contributor, it allows the entity to relicense your contribution. Which for Apache license projects is fine, because Apache license just allows you to relicense anyway. So that's not a concern for them. But for a GPL3 project, I think that is a concern, and so I don't think their CLA is appropriate for that.
So we previously agreed that all of our stuff would be GPL.
I did quite like the CLA that the GS Foundation has, an organization that hosts jQuery, Webpack, QUnit, and a bunch of basically everything that runs the JavaScript ecosystem you've heard of. It's a much simpler and shorter CLA. It has some nice features that I like, but it does not include a patent grant, which I think is significant, and it also is unclear about whether that's like something they want others to reuse. It does say like copyright JS Foundation, all rights reserved in the footer of the website, and it's not really inviting you to reuse it. Whereas the one that I'm proposing here is from the Harmony project, which is a project for like templates for agreements and such things. And it's explicitly intended for you to reuse it because they have like a CLA generator, which is what I used to make the first draft of this, and then I tweaked it a bit. And the most prominent use of this CLA template is the CLA that Canonical has now. Canonical is the organization that runs Ubuntu, and they have a CLA that's almost exactly what I have here. The main feature of the Harmony CLA that's good, other than the fact that it has a patent grant and all those good things, is that
Could you explain what the patent grant means?
so the patent licensing 2.2, it basically says that like to the extent that you have any patent claim, that the contributor has any patent claims on what they contribute, they give the entity that they granted to, like, they basically say they want to enforce a patent against them. You can,
And that's necessary.
There are some CLAs without it. I don't have an incredibly informed opinion about whether it's necessary, but a lot of CLAs do it. And it's, I think it's probably useful, but I'm not the most expert person in that. The main things that are important here, I think, other than the patent stuff that are where my expertise has been shaky, is that the contributor retains ownership of the copyright. The entity that manages the project gets a forever and irrevocable license to do stuff with the contribution. But the entity binds itself to only distribute the contribution under the license that was in use of the project at the time it was submitted. So for us, it would be GPL3 for code and CC by SA for things like
Or later.
Or later for both, yes. Excuse me. And so then, if the entity like quote unquote turns evil later and wants to like relicense it under something dramatically different, then they like lose the right to use contribution view. So this is a way for someone to say like, This is a way for the entity to get all the certainty, like this person promises that they own the copyright on this, that they're like allowed to give this to you. They're allowed to license it under this license. But also, and that they won't get you in trouble, but also the entity promises that they will only license the contribution and things that include contribution under the license that we agree to at the time. So that's sort of the short of it, of what the agreement is. And we can review this and talk about it at further meetings. But this is, you can think of it as it's basically a canonical CLA with like the license name change and stuff.
My only question is, who would be the entities?
Yeah, I was about to say that. The open question, the big open question here is, what is the entity that the contributor makes this agreement with?
So I have a question, but also like a couple of comments around that. Like, one thing that's a little bit, I'm a little worried about is we're kind of already on kind of shaky ground with the copyright situation, because we kind of got an informal opinion from the city attorney that like technically this does need to be copyrighted by the city.
Okay.
So is it going to be okay for us to kind of like build on that without like going through those motions? And then, and the other thing is, does the city need to, would the city need to agree to this, or can you just?
If the entity that the people are making the agreement with is the city, then the city definitely needs to agree to this, and in theory, someone even needs to like sign on behalf of the city.
But why can't? But if I'm a contributor, like I could say I grant the city the ability to use this, and then the city doesn't need to agree to that writing. I mean, why does the city?
No, sorry, you're right. They don't. You only. I mean, the city would just like agree to anything that you send them. So yeah, what you need to do as a contributor is like some version of like print out this document, sign it.
But does the entity need to? So we can talk about what the
Sorry, the entity doesn't. Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry. In the process that I've seen, that like Canonical use and the Passion use and those people.
The entity doesn't.
No, I'm sorry. You don't countersign. So they just ask you to like print out the agreement and sign it and like send a PDF of the
So,
sign.
I mean, you can imagine the people who want to modify it and get approval, but you can say no. You can say this is what it is, take it or leave it.
Well, I mean, is it appropriate to ask the city attorney if they
Well,
think this is a good?
We definitely should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do we feel a CLA is necessary? A lot of projects don't have CLAs.
Well, that's another question. Maybe we don't need one,
Yeah, I also am not a big fan of CLAs regardless. I mostly did this because Chris asked me to, but on the whole, I'm a fan of avoiding CLAs when it's reasonable to do so.
Well, so I mean, the last question I had was actually on this point.
Mhm.
The reason I had thought we should have a CLA because I was envisioning that the CLA would have a relicensing fee.
Oh, okay.
And so when you came up with yours out, that's the thing that kind of I noticed first, because
Mhm.
I think it'd be worth talking about, like, because yeah, if we're not going to have the relicensing, then why do we even need one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless maybe it covers,
If some organizations are more paranoid than others, and governments doubly so, so if we decide that a managing entity is the city, then I'm sure the city attorney would appreciate these kinds of agreements.
And when you think about the Department of Technology too, I mean, there may be a different agreement and a different system when they get around to it. But the city does want to be able to say, all this code belongs to us.
So-
We have the right to
Well,
use it.
I mean, let's say the city uses MySQL or something, they don't necessarily need to own copyright in order to use MySQL.
Right.
Right.
So I'm just like a little confused of.
Well, they don't redistribute MySQL though. So the idea is that the city would manage, say, in this case, we're talking about like the results report that Carl and Chris have been working on.
Yep.
Right? The city would manage that project, and they would be the ones publishing it, or at least in their official capacity, publishing it and distributing it, and accepting contributions to it. And then this is like, they are sort of, this covers their butts for like cases where someone is like, where there's a question about whether the contribution made by an external person can be used, or whether there's like some sort of patent problem with it. then this allows you to say, like, look, we have a signed document here that says, like, that if there's something wrong, we can blame that person for, like, signing the thing over to us that they weren't allowed to sign over. Like, they represented that they weren't allowed to do that.
Right.
This is not our fault. We did our sort of like minimum level diligence, our butts are covered, but go yell at that person. That's my understanding of like mostly the function of CLA, like that and future relicensing possibility, as Chris mentioned.
Yeah, so how do people feel about the relicensing thing? Because I actually thought that might be kind of important, because like, let's say that maybe there's some like reason that we don't know about where we like really do need to change like the license for some part of things, and then we're not gonna be able to,
So there are multiple variants of this agreement, like when you use this template, you can choose like 5 different options for section 2.3. One of them is like only the license that's currently in use. The one that I chose is like the license that's in use, or like these licenses that are explicitly specified. So in this case, I chose GP160SA. But there's also options like you could expand the list of licenses, or there's also options like, you know, just whatever we feel like, or like any OSI group license, any copyleft license. Those kinds of options are also available. So we could choose one of those things.
yes. So how do people feel like informally just about the relicensing thing? Like, do you think it's important to preserve that ability or no?
Well, I mean, GPLv3 is like the most aggressive copyleft license possible, to the point where like it actually becomes one of a lot of Linux Foundation projects, because more and more industry open source is moving towards Apache 2, and then like, commingling them is really annoying. That would be the only thing I'd imagine where we want to relicense, is we like needing to step back from copyleft for whatever reason, integration jig into other systems. So that's really.
Yeah, I mean, we could make it so that, like, maybe the relicensing is only allowed if, like, the existing copy holders agree to it or something.
Well, that's always the case.
Well, well, depending on who the entity is.
Which is why
if it's
you
being
need
corrupted.
But there's a difference between, like, say, a 2/3, majority versus 100%. Like, the issue, I think that was brought up is, okay, so if I croak, then you have to get my ears to,
Right.
yes.
Well, we can talk that separately, but it's more, yeah.
I mean, the city wants to be able to say, look, we have the right to do this. Whether they decide to redistribute or not redistribute, it's still comforting to them, I think, from a legal perspective, to say, this is ours and we can deal with it without having to go search for the long-lost spouse of.
But if you require the majority of the contributors, or that you think
No,
majority of the
you
contributors.
gotta have all of it.
But you could do that with CLA though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just spell out the conditions by which the license could be changed.
Mhm. I haven't offhand found any CLAs that do anything fancy with that kind of stuff.
No.
But
Yeah, pretty much the only CLAs I've seen are you give all rights for relicensing, or it's mostly to cover patents.
yeah, patents and like bug covering.
But this CLA says you can't relicense.
Yeah, the CLA says you can't relicense. That's the one that I chose because when I saw the list, I chose the one that aligns with my sort of ideological position. But yeah, if it's practical for the city to do something else, then we can do that.
I mean, the city's not gonna relicense it without a process. It's not.
Right, yeah, it's not gonna, and you can say that it has to be like an OSI group license.
But I mean, you can imagine a future in which they actually get this software built, and then there are other jurisdictions that want to use it.
So to be clear, this would apply to the work that Carl and Chris are doing,
Okay.
not necessarily to the sort of larger project.
But if we, having gone to the work to create this,
Well, they could adopt that.
yeah.
They could, and also you could for the tax thing in particular, you could try to run it as a separate entity if you wanted to, and if the city attorney doesn't want to murder you usually for that, or decide that you don't want to do CLAs. Again, if it's something that like the city attorney thinks feasible, because it's, like you're right, like the copyright status of like things that we do in our official capacity as tax members is kind of hazy. In the sense of like, do you own copyright as a city?
So I think there's another aspect of this that I think is good, is the liability disclaimers are explicit in the CLA. So you're not
Yeah.
relying on me putting liability disclaimers in every piece of code, you know, that I check in.
Okay. So,
So it sounds like a yes
for what?
for wanting to use it. I mean, I think Brandon may have some wishes that not be, but
Or was your point just that it's not necessary?
Well, so like in CNCF, the project, there's like 14 projects. The only project that uses CLAs, Kubernetes. Everyone else uses a DCO, which is just when you commit to Git, you add a thing that says signed off by, which adds a little thing that has your contact email in the commit, which is what the Linux kernel uses as well.
What does DCO stand for?
Just developer certification of origin.
Oh, okay, so they basically like
There's
represent it as their work.
Yes, if that's like the primary concern, I mean, I feel like if it's good enough for kernel, it's good enough.
Yeah, it's good enough for a large project like that, it's probably good enough for.
And that's what the vast majority of CNCF projects
Do you
use.
need, does that raise like the technical bar to contributing to the project?
You have to add -s when you do a git commit.
Oh, okay.
And then there's bots that help enforce the commits in that.
Just the user does?
Is that SS means digitally signed?
It just means signed off by. It's because
It just means signed in some way.
well, literally all it does is
Don't take the word
add-
sign seriously, literally.
Yeah, all it does is add a string at the bottom of the commit that says signed off by, and then your name and then email.
Okay.
And this is what
It's just a tag in the commit.
this is what the kernel has used for, I don't know, a decade now.
And I guess this also gets used when you have commits that end up having like authorship of multiple people, right? Because Git has authorship mandated for commits, but it only fits one author. So I've seen this used in some contexts for like when there's a commit that ends up being the result of collaboration between multiple people, and like the co-authors will. I think there's a co-authoring by editor too, right? So,
Yeah, the main idea though is just that this is to cover, like, this person took steps to add this flag when they contributed this, that explicitly adds metadata about themselves into the commit. And so, in the opinion of the Linux kernel and the supporting lawyers from those companies, that was sufficient for the like origin question. And then all their contributions were under the license, which is GPL v2 in the case of the kernel.
yeah.
Which, like, in the case of V3, I believe already includes a patent clause.
Yeah.
Is my understanding. I use V3 personally.
So I feel like the relicensing thing is sort of like we have to decide that before we make any other decisions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was kind of leaning towards allowing for it, because if we do relicense, there's gonna have to be another discussion at that point.
Yeah, I would be okay with like allowing the city to relicense under an OSI approved license.
Okay.
So would you modify the CLA to say that it could be relicensed, but it must be a...
Yeah, that was an explicit option in the Harmony financial case template, actually.
And then the second question is, is it okay for this copyright situation to be ambiguous, but still proceed with like the CLA? Like the entity might be kind of unclear.
I think that's difficult because,
Can we just like do the city and the existing copyright holders, you know? Sorry, it could just be me and Carl, I guess.
right, like the person that they're making this agreement with is you, Carl.
Well,
Maybe. I think mostly what you have to have, like mostly the purpose of this is to just have a record of like, this person agreed to the Bybit thing. but you also want to then not change what the thing that they're agreeing to is. And if you're changing like which party they're giving the right to relicense their code, then you're changing the agreement. Right, so you want them to, when you like, you collect your like stack of signed documents saying like this person has agreed to the thing, this person agreed to the thing, but like, you can't then retroactively change what they agreed to.
I know.
So, yeah, so this is worth talking to the city attorney too, I think, about, I think.
So also, if the city is claiming they own copyright to the code that we're working on, then it seems like we need a CLA to make like copyrights
So,
more defined.
yeah, so you're saying we should get clear?
Well, if the city is going to, I think, I believe earlier you said your understanding was that the city thinks it should be theirs,
Yeah.
or, you know, because we're on
Yeah.
the OSVTAC.
Okay,
So I mean, if that's the case, then it would seem like a explicit contract like this would be good.
Well, then, yeah.
Okay, so then, next
Or that-
question.
And that would be a way that they could say they are the we, but there's an agreement by the contributors on how their code could be used.
Okay, so Brandon, so you know, like, the issue is, for the city, if the city does have the copyright, we would probably need to get the Board of Supervisors to pass an ordinance saying that allowing for this to be distributed on the open source license. We're kind of avoiding that by just doing this informally. But,
Well, it's really, sounds like it's totally fine if you guys are doing stuff formally. It's mostly about external contributors and what their expectations are, right? Because you can relicense it however you want, the two of you.
Well, if they own the copy, if
Well,
you said they
the
own
fact that
copy.
we're sitting here, we're not developing code during meetings.
So we did adopt this as
But
an
we did.
official project of the committee. And so the question is, if it's like analogous to like a work for hire thing, where, because this is an organ of the city could claim that they own the copyright to what we make in our capacity as committee members.
well, so here's the question. Could we proceed with the CLA, have it, the entity be the city, and then could we, like, later on have the city authorize the license? Would that not, do we need to, can
I don't-
we still postpone that process?
Yeah, I don't think that you can put this out there with the city as a party without the city attorney's blessing.
Okay.
And if, and alternatively, if you want to take contributions from the public in the meantime, who are not members of this committee, then they might have to decide that they like, you know,
What
the
other
other
licenses are you considering?
Well, we've only agreed on GPLv3 because that's sort of what kind of the activists were wanting us, and then the commission supported that, and then TAC supported that. So
But I think you're saying, like, if there's some sort of practical reason why that becomes a problem in the future, then you want to be able to.
Yeah, and the other thing we can do is just add 8 different license files and hope that one of them is the right one.
It's like, by all the contribution, you agree to license them in all of them. And then,
Well, I mean, many projects are dual license,
right.
or even tri-license. I've seen
Yeah.
GPL, Apache license software.
Yeah.
Well, but then we would anger the activists. I mean, we'd have to change our position.
Yeah, I mean, you could also change it to like the MIT license, and then it's basically like super permissive, and anyone can take it and do whatever they want with it.
Why would, yeah, I would rather, I mean, I think we should still keep with GPLv3 unless we have to change it.
But I mean, yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I can speculate about the legal situation around this all day long, but I think it is also time to get the city attorney's office, like the person to make some decisions also about what their position on the copyright ownership of these things is.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems important, like they'll need to be sorted out one way or the other. This is a sort of project, what they're gonna do.
And it's a good driver exercise for them to solve the question of when DT comes to them with the same question in 6 months.
Well, so the other issue is just that, I mean, does the IT department here, should they have a contributor's license agreement? Because clearly, maybe San Francisco would be copyright owner,
So,
or they're work for hire.
so this is a reason for our going through this with
Yeah.
the city attorney first, so that the city attorney has a clue about open source licenses and contributor agreements. Because it wasn't clear to me that the project plan that we saw this evening anticipated things like community and discussion boards and
They had a
external
working group about,
contributions and the like.
they proposed a working group about licensing.
So they may get there.
Yeah.
But if the city attorney has seen this kind of stuff before, it certainly will smooth the process.
But,
We don't need to do the DT now, that's for later.
yeah,
Yeah.
Just plenty of time.
No,
no, just the only thing is it's a model.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're, so, like, I'm kind of halfway between, I mean, I think the selection say, well, it can be changed to any OSI license. Maybe it's too permissive.
Mhm.
So it could be changed to any OSI license, you know, under certain conditions.
Yeah, or you could say like any license of the FSS is a copyleft license or stuff like that. There's.
Well, it's
I
just
forget
that,
what their option is.
that if some bureaucrat in some department in San Francisco says, oh, okay, I'm gonna change it, and the contributors have no say in it, that
Right,
would be a undesirable outcome.
right, which is why you can specify that it could be a copyleft license or that.
Well, how about this? What about this? What if you generate a new template or a new version that has some relicensing clause, and then I just use that to talk with the attorney,
Yeah,
and then we can, at the next meeting, I can share with you what that conversation was, and we can continue to think about it.
In the meantime, I don't feel like it should slow down the work that you're doing.
Oh, of course.
oh yeah, well, the five of us can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that.
We're gonna talk about the next item too, yeah.
Okay, so let's take public comment on this item.
Yes, maybe 2 points. One is that my understanding is that for regulatory certification, that one of the kind of formal requirements is being able to show origin of software and all the contributions to it. And my sense, I'm not an expert on that, but my sense is that either the two kind of basic alternatives that you were talking about here tonight could probably help satisfy that requirement. I'm not certain to what extent that is also explicitly in the California certification requirements as opposed to the federal requirements. I'd have to do something to double check on. But that is one reason why you would want to not just ignore the issue and taking contributions without any sort of documentation about where they're coming from and the circumstances of accepting them. The other thing, and this may be something that you have all talked to death already, and I don't want to distract you with it if that is the case, but I just mentioned that the affair GPL license is something that to me would be probably preferable to just a regular GPL license, and that might be one of the reasons for considering some relicensing if you're going forward right now with just a plain GPL license. The principle, well, yeah.
I was actually, thank you for bringing it up, because I was actually about to take issue with Brandon's assertion that GPL3 is like the most sort of copyright or most aggressive copyleft license. I was like, surely AGPL is more aggressive. Yeah, which is a good point. I don't know where the GPL3 decision came from, because I think it's before my time. And I think that, yeah, what is, Yeah.
I've never heard that issue really discussed.
Yeah, but, you know, some of the issues that came up, like, this is in the 2005, 2006 period, one of the things that really set RMS off was the TiVoization.
yeah, that's where GPL3 came from.
Yeah, and so that was one of the triggers for it. And there was a lot of debate about it at the time. But since they were going to change it, then, there were other things that came into the discussion as well.
Yeah, so, yeah, a Pharaoh, so I'm thinking of like in what cases a Pharaoh helps you, which is like, a Pharaoh was designed for things like someone runs a website on open source software, but they don't actually have to disclose the source because they're not distributing the code itself.
Well, some microsystems was, key player and AGPL.
Yeah, well, we can always revisit.
So we can revisit it later, and thank you for remarking that, like proof of origin or documentation of origin is important for certification as well, because I didn't know that, but it makes a lot of sense. And like, that's also where, an area where like, agreements might be helpful. If you can give the Secretary of State like a stack of papers and stuff, like here's all the people that signed this thing saying, like they only copyrighted it, they contributed to that. I can see that helping.
So Don, it's AFFARO.
Double F, okay.
So it looks like there's a character problem in 3C.
Did I?
There's a...
Oh, no, that's deliberate because this is Markdown. And in Markdown.
Oh, I see, this is the source of the Markdown.
This is the Markdown source that
Oh,
I
I
said,
see.
Chris.
Okay.
And in Markdown, if you do parenthesis C, it turns into a copyright symbol. So the way you avoid that is by encoding one of the parentheses as an HTML entity.
Okay. Escape it.
Yeah. And it's AFFERO.
Is it ERO? That was
ERO.
Okay, so is there anything else in number 7 before we move on? Thank you for,
And so that are you going to follow up with the city attorney?
you have to do regenerate.
Yeah, okay. And then-
Okay, so next item.
Item 8, voting system component development. Discussion and possible action regarding OSVTAC developing and/or facilitating the development of one or more voting system components as a proof of concept.
Okay, so for this item, I'd like us to kind of, talk about kind of expanding our efforts a little bit, and just because I know to maybe get more of us involved. But for starters, I guess we could share what we've done since the last meeting, and then we can kind of go into the future things. But do you want to talk about anything?
Sure, well, one I emailed you
Yeah.
on, but I never got a reply.
Sorry about that. Yes, I got it, and then the election happened.
Yeah.
I'm going to, now that the election is over, I'm going to have a lot more time to put into that. So I possibly by the December meeting, but certainly by the January meeting, I should be able to do some stuff.
Okay, so just to let everyone know, so I'd ask if Roan could look into building some CSS for our templates. So we have a results reporter, well, just doing you up, Philip. We
Brandon.
decide, what?
Brandon.
Oh, Brandon, sorry, that's Philip's your last name. Totally fine. So we have some test data, some minor test data, and an open source results reporter based on the template-based approach.
It's Ginger templates, right?
Ginger templates. And so basically we can make new layouts by just changing Ginger templates. But it's just a rudimentary template what we have now for testing. So we need to write some real ones to create new layouts. One of the things that I was planning on doing, I also sent an email to a friend asking if she had come across nice layouts for results reporting, but then she never replied to me. Maybe she's gone. But like I've said, I dealt with 35 counties now. So I was going to put together some just samples to, we could look at as, for ideas on what we like or don't like, and so forth, and maybe do that. The open results reporter could also be used to generate the accessible sample ballots. Like their city is using a service called OmniBallot to do that. They also use it to do remote accessible vote by mail. I think it downloads like 3 or 4 megabytes of stuff to do HTML sample ballot. So,
Seems accessible.
that's, besides reporting results, you could also be used to generate a sample ballot.
Right.
Just, it's same as results, but without
Yeah.
the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's like maybe something to keep in mind. Also Chris has been doing some extra development. I think he's been doing like PDF reporting and.
Yeah, well, I was gonna show it on the screen.
But you can talk about that. I've been gathering data. I updated, so we have 3 repositories now. We have the open source results reporter code, and it has a small set of sample data that can just be used for validation. And then we have another whole area for just a repository for sample data. So I've updated that. I have some data for the November election starting to come in. I have updated information for the June election. I also have some 2016 November data. And then we have a 3rd repository to keep source code for data conversion. And I'm also putting the downloading code in that as well, so you can go download data for a new election and build up the sample areas as well as conversion. So I've been kind of busy, backlogged with work again in the last month, and then doing work for the election. So I've been short on time, but I should have more time over the next month. So we'll have data for June and a full set of data for November election as well. We can use to generate. Once we have some good CSS to do that. So another issue. I updated the sample data to include ranked choice voting, but it sort of brought up an issue that we need to define a bunch of terms for what round I means. What's the definition of round 1 or round 0? And also there's an issue of how do you want to report ranked choice voting. So so one way I've done it is you report the highest votes. If a candidate gets eliminated, instead of just saying they have 0 votes, you can show the highest number of votes. So I don't know, maybe if we have some time, we might want to talk about that.
I can show it.
Great. So are there any other issues that you can think of, Chris, that we might want to discuss today?
Well, there's a number of issues I want to discuss, but I just wanted to kind of give it, just talk about what we already did, and then we can talk about going forward. But yeah, I wanted to just quickly show a few things. So this is, what was the button I pressed again? The power button?
No, I didn't press the power one. Let me see what it did.
Or you press the input button?
No, I think it was this one.
Well, let me see how this goes in non-technical meetings.
How many software you turn on TV, right?
Yeah, none, it's a hardware problem.
It is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
All right, so now you want the PC, that's their PC. You want to have an external
No, I just want to use this.
Okay.
It's on the web.
then you're good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so here's our results reporter repository. So one of the things I did was I have a Travis CI on here,
Oh, nice.
running our tests. There's an end-to-end test of our minimal example. And I also published our minimal example to the demo repository, so we can actually look at it. And it's just basic, but here's the demo. And so I got a minimal PDF working that this can be improved, but just to kind of, and then here's the the summary page. And the thing that Carl had mentioned on ranked choice voting reporting, I implemented this a couple of days ago. So this is actually better than what the city currently does. The city only reports the first choices on their summary page.
But you are now not reported at all on the summary page.
Right, so this is kind of like and I actually asked David for suggestions, and Carl had suggested this too. It's kind of like sort of like the most information you could provide in a single column, right, Carl?
Right.
And it says how many rounds they got, and then what percent.
And you also sorted the candidates by
Yeah.
number of votes.
Yeah, so then, and then we can have this can be implemented here.
I see you have an RCV election, you have a jungle primary election, where there's 2 winners.
Yeah.
Well, they call it jungle.
Oh, yeah, jungle primary, it's the term that I've heard, right? It's called the,
Open
primary, or
open
voter nominated offices is what the California Constitution calls it. But,
So by the way, you can't really tell, but it's pretty much just really vanilla HTML,
Yeah,
you know,
I-
very simple table.
yeah, I can tell that from. yeah, I know exactly what
So
it is.
it should be easy to
Yeah.
use CSS to.
Well,
add
I
that.
can always
You could always change it,
templates
yeah.
if I want it to be more malleable.
So yeah, this is the RCV data. So anyways,
Oh, that's the data format for the detailed analysis. So it includes RCV ranking, totals, and precinct and district breakdowns.
yeah,
So
so,
per round as well?
yeah, this is,
Oh, I see, sorry.
So,
Yeah,
and
varsity rounds
definition,
and then-
so the definition of RCV round 1 is the initial set of valid votes before any elimination.
Okay.
And then round 2 is after the first elimination.
so right now, the demo repo is structured, it has a script where it has the reporter as a submodule, and it has a script that if you run it, it'll just regenerate the thing that was published. And we could, so there's kind of like a larger discussion I want us to have, and that is, like number 1, like how do we sort of like expand more of us being involved, and how do we kind of coordinate that? You know, should we be using the issue tracker? How do we do things so we're not violating the sunshine ordinance? And then I know Brandon, you were wondering like about the coordination aspect over email, but and also, and maybe do we even, because of the sunshine thing, do we want to maybe you know, maybe even work on other things aside from the results reporter, like if you had a special interest in something.
So can I ask a meta question?
Yeah.
So where, this is, I mean, it's interesting to, as a proof of concept that we can do it and to build it, but we can imagine, you know, is there any possibility of actually getting this into the eventual system that will be designed and built by DT, or is this just an exercise, a demonstration of capability? I have no answer to that, because I don't know how, you know, that whole project is going to go. But I was wondering what other people thought.
Well, I think in the case of the results report, it's something that could be used, because it's fairly simple, and, or at least it could be built upon.
Yeah, because it can be sort of both, right? Like you can say we're primarily doing this as a proof of concept, but we're also it's also sitting here if anyone wants to use it.
Well, it's open source. So.
It's open source, so anyone can
Yeah,
go take
but
it.
there is definitely the not invented here.
And that could happen because they could say, oh, I'm going to contract with company X, and they say, oh, now we want to do that.
Well, but also it's not something we have to decide right now.
No, I know, but it does. That's
But
fine.
I guess your thought was that we could do this to get things started, and with the intent that it could be used, or with the, I mean, you're writing the software not just as a academic exercise, but as a contribution to get things going.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in the case of the results reporter, I think this is something that the department could use today. Like, and even the new Dominion system that they're considering purchasing, like, it doesn't even do this. You know, it still does the same first choices.
Except that I thought San Francisco has their own custom
They do, but we just,
results reporter.
which we just heard as being described as pretty shady.
Well,
Oh, okay, it might have been before you came in, but
Yeah.
Director Gerald, when Director Gerald was here, she said that one of the fires that she had to deal with, or that she was on the floor a lot when the election kind of was going on, because that results, some of their own tech stack around publishing election results.
So this is San Francisco's election results page?
Yeah.
yeah, so this is what
With the Carter County election results.
Okay. I've just seen so many of them, I can't remember.
So, but I think kind of like the step beyond this test would be to have, have the data for the November election in our repository, have a script to generate the input file for a results reporter, and then have a nice template, and then we could basically have a better version of this.
So I'm pretty sure I'll have sample data for November by the next meeting in a month from now.
Are we also considering, so it looks like the input to the results reporter contains the breakdown of every RCV event, right?
Yeah.
So the results reporter does not itself run the RCV.
So actually I got that from the HTML page.
That's, I thought you would, yeah.
But we could write software to compute
Yeah.
it, but that's, I mean, there's no need to because I can scrape it from it's also available, I'm not sure, but I think it might be in a spreadsheet as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember, now there's on their results page, it's actually nice, they have for each update, they have a table of all the data files in like different formats available. So you can take the raw results or PDFs or whatever. And I was gonna download all those and store like maybe the final results or something and store them in our sample set.
Yeah, and I think what would be important is for to kind of like enable this to expand. We want to give other people the ability to reproduce things, just based on the documentation.
So the other thing I could do, I'll just posit this, is I could convert the state result. I have all the state result data. So if you want, well, at least for summary and county breakdown, we could format it in this format if we decide we want to.
Yeah, let's take it one step at a time. But I think we could definitely do that.
I mean, do you think it's worthwhile for me to build a sample repository of state with county
Well,
breakdown?
I would personally think we should only do that once we finish San Francisco, just because there's a lot we haven't done in San Francisco yet.
Well, I just meant in terms of extracting sample data.
I think when we,
I'm not-
so I think that if we do San Francisco and we prettify it so it looks nice, I would be interested in getting the reaction from people in DT to, is this, look at this cool thing we've done, here's a piece of what might end up in a final system, what do you think? Because you may see right away that there's a bunch of qualifying vocabulary or resistance or something, or there might be, on the other hand, extreme enthusiasm about, can you give us more, can you do more? And it's impossible to calibrate it exactly, but at least see the receptiveness to accepting open source code that's being done by, under the auspices of the city.
So would we need, like, to tackle the practical aspect of your question, Carl, I guess the reason you want state data with county breakdown is so that you have a breakdown scenario, is it?
No, it's just to show a set of, alternate way of using the results reporter that's not just San Francisco.
Okay.
I mean, I could do another county,
Right, because
But I thought it might be interesting just to say, oh yeah, you could use it for county, you could use it for state, you could use it for.
Yeah. Because my response to that was gonna be like, if you want to do a breakdown thing, then you can break down SF results by district or precinct or something.
Well, it's already there. It's just
It's already
that
given a vote, it's
the
not-
analogy, instead of breaking down by precinct or
Yeah.
neighborhood, it's by county, but
Yeah.
it's the same data format. It's
Well,
just,
yeah, I mean, I would rather than like expanding the scope of things, I think we should try to complete, you know, what we've got, because there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of work to do in just getting even the San Francisco specific, you know, documented and like, so other people can use it.
so also I just thought I'd mention there's 2 commercial companies that are offering results recorder services. One's called
We
Clarity.
Go into business.
What? No, I'm just saying it's kind of a competition, but it's also something to measure what we have against. Just to point out, well, as I mentioned before, you know, I want to make some sample URLs of, you know, other counties, you know, how things look, so we could get ideas. So some of those are Clarity and livevoterturnout.com that, and you get to see what they look like, but one of the issues is some of those have problems. So it may be worth, also part of the project is comparing our results
Yeah, we could do that.
with, you know, other examples, you know, including the 2 commercial companies.
So the kind of, this bigger question I was getting at before is, like, how are we gonna kind of, how should we kind of divide things up, or how do we kind of like continue working on this? Should we just kind of like go the same way we've been going, or?
So I think that it seems there's at least like a couple of distinct things that each person can do without needing to collaborate much or at all with another person, right? Like I can go off and do templating stuff, and other than having to ask Carl some administrative questions about like how does X work, we're not actually going to be collaborating on that. And similarly, like if Carl is going to get more data from more sources or do stuff in that area, then he can do that. And so maybe we can find more people like corners that they can work in. There is a bit of a tension there with like, I think what you said is also really true. Like let's narrow the scope and try to do one thing well and not like 3 things half done. And so that's in tension a little bit with like trying to find every person in the corner.
Yeah, one thing that kind of is tricky though is like if we're in our corners and like in the middle of the month, someone's kind of going astray or something, it's like, it takes a while to get the feedback.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's
So-
the ground is for it, but
Okay, so,
it's, I don't know.
I mean, once Chris and we met at a coffee shop and kind of did some work together, and we could bounce ideas off each other.
and then what do you think we should, okay. All right, and I guess we're not going to be involving the public at all. Yeah.
So,
So
also,
I guess we can identify broadly like what we think we should work on next.
well, go ahead, I was going to
Brandon,
just.
yeah, do you have any interest in helping on a technical level on anything, or do you have time, or?
Yeah, interest, just trying to understand what you guys are building first.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so early on, what we kind of laid out maybe like a dozen components to a voting system.
Yeah, I read the overview document.
So we had decided to start with the results reporter component.
I see.
And what that does is it takes the tabulated vote totals in JSON form, TSV files, and then it just formats it in a way for the public to view it. And we're going to have Excel files, PDFs, HTML tables, and a couple of extra features, multiple languages. And so that's what we're working on right now. And
An example of like an additional feature is like when the election is certified, there's like this letter basically that the Director of Elections has to send and sign and then send to the Secretary of State. So like he certifies the election and like here's the overview of the results. And it looks pretty simple, like Chris said in the previous meeting, to like just generate a PDF of that letter.
the figures in
Yeah, well, like the letter that like, if there's like a certification letter or something that you
to
can
like
just
automate
generate.
more stuff.
Yeah. Or at least the attachment to it, you could definitely generate.
And then, so that's kind of like what we were working on, and, but like other, so you'd be able to help with that, or depending on what your interests are, yeah, I mean, there's like other things too.
Yeah, the other extreme is like everyone goes and works on a different component, right? That's maybe a little bit of the scope.
Well, we're trying to get this one component
Yeah, exactly.
working.
Yeah.
So also, at the last meeting, one of the members of the public said he knew of someone that wanted to, or might be interested in doing some sort of GIS plotting.
Mhm.
But I sent him an email, but he didn't reply.
I think that's because he was doing quite a lot of work for a campaign that, for the election that happened 2 days ago.
Should I
So-
send him another email in
Uh,
a few weeks?
Yeah, like, or maybe next week, yeah, like, the fact that you didn't get a response before election day from him doesn't surprise me.
Because he was involved in,
He was involved in the campaign.
oh, okay. Yeah, I
so-
knew somebody else, I sent him an email, he didn't reply.
So,
He said he's getting so many emails because he was in a campaign.
so like Brandon, one of the things, and I mean, I don't know if, because I know Brandon, you had an interest in, like one component would be taking images and
Oh, yeah,
Well, that's a scanner.
doing
That's
recognition.
quite a complicated one.
Yeah,
yeah,
so we have some sample ballot images from the June election,
Oh, that's cool.
like PDFs of real ballots that were cast.
Right.
So,
Like different precincts.
if you wanted to get started on something doesn't already have like a lot of people involved, like you could start.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do a spike on this. I've done computer vision stuff in the past.
Okay, great, because that was sort of my fears, like, the
So-
reason Carl's hitting me up for like styling a thing is because I'm a front-end web developer. Yeah, I'm very happy to have someone who has done computer vision stuff before, because it seems kind of intimidating if you've never done it before.
So actually, I've thought about this issue a lot too. But, no, I forgot what I was going to say, sorry. Oh, these are scanned ballots, and one issue is the way they did the scanning. They did it with, there's some in JPEG, but the others are stored binary, but it's like stippled grayscale instead of, you need to somehow convert, the raw grayscale or color into, binary data that you can use for comparisons.
This thing.
Well, if you just look at another page, you'll see and zoom in.
Oh, well, okay. Anyways, so
Are you viewing the PDF file?
yeah.
Yeah, just advance a couple pages.
I think he's viewing it, oh yeah, they're viewing it, yeah.
I think this was a slip of one. I mean, it's not so important for right now, but
No, I'm just saying if you're trying to use that data. But since the last meeting, we did obtain PDFs of the original, so we can make new clean copies, and then you could, if you want to just print them out and mark them for testing.
Okay. Oh, so we have blanks, like PDFs of blanks?
Yeah, we have I believe it's a non-scanned PDF.
Oh, okay, so that
But I
also
haven't
gives
looked
you-
at it yet, but.
That also gives you like a blank to like do a delta against, I guess.
Right. So what you might do is, Well, you can use the PDF, you can use the unmarked image file for alignment when you're,
Yeah.
when you're matching up the pixels, and then you could use that as a mask to mask off the printing so that you can see anything that's not, that was written over it, and then eliminate all the pre-printed stuff so that you could just work with the digitized pieces. But then there's another issue of you need to know the location. So what I was going to say was I also there's a couple of different open source projects that have done ballot scanners. One's called Open Count, and I tried to use it, but then the sample data that they had was not unusable. And there's no active developers right now, so I mean, if you wanted to, you could play around with that, with this data, and I haven't gotten back to that because I'm sort of busy focusing on the open results reporter. But I mean, I think if you wanted to contribute on the open results reporter, we could find things that need to be done too.
What was the next, like, in the hierarchy of things, is the results reporter, and then there's like a summarizer or something?
I got vote to alert.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's the tabulator. I feel like but I feel like it would almost be easier to work on the, because this is something that could be useful even with our next voting system, because they're planning on publishing the pictures of ballots online.
Mhm.
So basically like a software library where we could use this software component to take an image of a ballot and tell you what the votes are on. And just kind of like a very standalone isolated piece. But it's kind of like a different flavor from the other stuff. I feel like the totaler is almost...
The totaler is like in the middle between these two things, right? It's like, this would produce
Cast vote
vote
records.
records. And the totaler would say like, okay, in this precinct there are this many votes for blah.
Yeah, but the
Or you
thing with the
generate-
totaler, it's almost not as useful because we don't know where the things are coming from.
Yeah, it's kind of that hyper-nil piece.
If
The
we don't have cast vote records,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
this
so you
process,
need-
then it's not really very useful.
So I feel like this is kind of something we haven't started working on, and it sounded like we might have.
Yeah, I think it would be a good thing for Brandon's work, I'm sure. And I think in a totaler, there's not that much that happens other than like totaling and the RCP algorithm.
Yeah. And there's already lots of RCP algorithms online.
Yes, I have, from my own experience, like writing my own thing for that, I think a major distinguishing factor there is like how much auxiliary data you retain. Because, I mean, obviously you want to at least be able to go from like the city's CVR file to like the table with the eliminations and stuff like that. But if you retain more auxiliary data, then you can also do lots of other stuff like produce precinct by precinct totals of like how many votes in this precinct ended up with this candidate in the final round, and like have maps of like which candidate won which district in like a very complex RCB election that are actually meaningful. And like for basically I like wrote an RCB thing, and then I started wanting to do those, like wanting to answer those kind of data questions, and I ended up like writing a whole bunch more code in my RCB code to be able to support that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you don't, yeah. Well, let's pause and let's let the public comments too.
Maybe following up on Tony's thought a little bit, as you're looking on how to kind of continue to improve and enhance your results reporting. Besides, just maybe kind of making it look a little bit prettier, something that you could conceivably say, this is what we'd actually want to put in front of people looking at results on election. You might be thinking about, well, what are some other factors that would affect an assessment from, say, the Department of Technology about what you're producing, and what are maybe some things you could do to address what might be some of their concerns. We've certainly heard Director Durrell express key interest in issues of security and how security is addressed. and either, you know, even if it's as simple as kind of mocking out a logging process and providing in your codes an appropriate interface to that logging process is an example of kind of the sort of thing I'm thinking about, things that are maybe not immediately, you know, on the surface readily apparent. You've heard her talk about issues about the current reporting system that the current system is using, and how some of those issues surfaced and how she got involved with them in this election. Understanding what those issues are and making sure that you have some either kind of a demonstrated solution or at least a story to tell about how this would address those would be something to think about. I don't have some specifics about that. And you know, how does this as a proof of concept support kind of a larger, seemingly kind of more bureaucratic process that Director Terrell is looking at, and how can this be put forward as still as an effective proof of concept that's either something to use or something to follow as a template in that process is I think something you might want to look at as well.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, I mean, do you have any questions? Because I know this is your first meeting, and I know you also had questions to me that around, you were wondering like about the ability to collaborate across committee members. But I don't know. I don't really know what's in my mind. Is there anything you? Okay.
What we're trying to do with the results.
Okay.
So one of the things I guess we figured out, like 2 people can work together, but not 3. Right. So if, like, I can work with Chris on the Python code, and I can work with Rowan on the CSS, or I can work with you on some other component. So one of the other things that you can't see there is they have a map of San Francisco that color codes. You've probably seen those maps.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the data for that, but like another module could be generating an image, you know, given the GIS data, the outlines of the counties.
There's people that have done this already, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
I know some of them, so we can, yeah.
pulling, so that could be another piece of the open results report
Yeah.
that could be useful if you have an inclination to do that.
Okay. Honestly, I mean, my opinion, and I wonder how you all feel about this, my opinion is like, if you have computer vision prior experience and you're willing to like take a crack at interpreting valves, I think that would be a useful thing.
Yeah, I agree. But it's also whatever he's interested in too.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, you should make your own decisions, but like,
Yeah.
I'll offer
But that is a big I mean, it's a big project, even bigger than the results report.
Yeah.
But I've wanted to work on that myself personally, so.
Well, okay.
I mean, not exclusively, just I've also been interested in that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots to do, so.
So I guess one question I had, do you think it would be good for me to create a file in the, markdown file in the demo repository that gave links to other results sites, just as like reference samples? Would that be helpful? A good place to, or a good way to document it? I mean, I could also do things like I've been measuring the stats Like how long does the page take to load and how many megabytes over my 6 megabit fiber to the neighborhood connection? Like some things are like 30 seconds to load.
Like from some counties, you mean?
Yeah, even like the remote accessible ballot takes, I think, forget how many seconds it was. I mean, because they're downloading like, you know, many megabytes of, and, you know, lots of files.
Yeah, I mean, it's not essential, but if it's something you're interested in.
And a thing that I think I do want to, at some point, that I think I might try to focus building into the results reporter is better breakdown support than the city currently has. Because right now you can get like the top line results for each race. There's like a PDF of the top line results, and like there's the HTML tables for the RCV eliminations. But if you want to go like, okay, how did people in this district vote on this like citywide office or this proposition or something, then the only way you can get that information is by downloading either a PDF or a spreadsheet with like the full table of everything, and the PDF is like 600 pages. So it's a very unfriendly. Well, there's an Excel spreadsheet too, but like if the question that you want to ask is like, how did people in my district or in my precinct vote for X thing, like even if it's just like president or something, you know, then there is no way for you to get like a narrow answer to that, other than like downloading a 600-page PDF or like an Excel spreadsheet.
Or we're gonna have TSV files too.
Yeah. Or like, but you would have to. The point is, you would have to download the entire dump of the data in a not very friendly format. There's not like a web interface where you can say like, I live in District 6. How did my district vote on blah?
So I also might mention there's like, I noticed in, I only did a little bit, but there's precinct detail.
Yeah.
So the way San Francisco reports it is they have a contest and they show you the total results and then they show you the breakdown by precinct and breakdown by neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's for one contest.
Yes.
So they do it precincts by contest.
Yeah.
Whereas other counties do contest by precinct. So
Right.
so you'll see like, it looks like the summary results, but it's only for like precinct 101.
Mm-hmm.
But like what you were saying as well.
Right.
Other people in my precinct who voted for governor. So that's,
Yeah,
so some
or-
counties break it down that way, others say, governor, here's the breakdown by.
Well, and there's use
precinct.
cases for both, right? Like if I'm, like my friend who was working with the campaign, like a lot of data analysis they did was like, how did individual precincts in this district vote on things in previous elections?
Mhm.
Because that tells us, or tells them where like, people who you predict will be more
Are
aligned
they
with their
liberals
candidates
or
live.
conservatives or whatever?
Yeah, or.
Is this a red precinct or a blue precinct?
Exactly, but so that's why you want that use case. But if you are, so then you want to say like, okay, for this set of precincts in my district, how do they vote on a range of issues? But if you're like a ballot initiative campaign, and you want to vote like, okay, with like, Proposition C, for example, that was voted on a couple days ago, like you might want to know like, okay, which areas in the city voted how on this one thing. So there's very good use cases for both ends of that, right? And most counties only publish one together.
So in our results reporter can generate both types of
Yeah, I
detail
mean,
pages.
it's almost not scalable to do all this stuff as a static site. You're probably gonna wanna have
Yeah.
like a JavaScript thing or something.
Right,
It
and
might-
I say like, I mean, my vision for it is, and I agree there's other high priority stuff to do first, but like my personal dream of the thing that I would like the results site to be able to do is for you to just like request, like I want issues by ballot items by precinct or by district breakdown for this district precinct, or the reverse, I want
For a single contest.
for a single contest, I want to know everybody voted on it. And like, yeah, you would have to make that a dynamic website.
It does
to
make
generate everything.
It's actually pretty quick to pre-generate everything. It might be actually. much
Yeah,
faster.
sure. But I mean, when I say dynamic, is you're not gonna ship all those tables to the client in like megabytes of HTML and I don't.
Oh, yeah, that's the reason
Yeah.
why these other websites are so bad.
Yes. I mean, yeah, you can pre-generate all these results and have them statically on the server, but like your client is not gonna fetch the entire result set and then.
No,
Right,
well,
yeah.
that's actually one of the problems now is of the, everything's in one data file,
Yeah.
like you said, a 600-page PDF or a giant text file that's 10 bytes or something.
And so now, like, only the experts can, like, generate, like, a simple map of, like, which precinct voted how for mayor is something that, like, only one or two news outlets in the city have the bandwidth to generate. And so there's, like, 2 or 3 Twitter accounts that you can follow where those maps come from, and that's the only way that you can get them, because you have to basically be a data scientist to be able to generate that kind of information.
Okay,
So that's a situation that I would like to quote unquote democratize, but that's sort of getting off topic a little bit.
okay, so, all right, so do we need to do any kind of any more advanced coordination before we conclude this item? I'm personally just gonna continue just fleshing out, the remaining features for the reporter.
So I think I'm gonna mostly focus on building up our data set of, and also work backwards to get more into the election definition data and combine that with the EMS data.
Carl, I would encourage you to make it so that you have like one script that you document that generates the input for the results reporter, and store that file in the
With the data conversion.
I would store it in the sample data repo.
So actually the way, what I did is, I have a conversion Python code, and I also documented the data format in, that's just the downloaded data from OmniBallot, for example, as opposed to a separate file. But then I had a script that calls it, that's just like a one-line shell script.
So what I mean is that so that way if anyone ever modifies the code, they can rerun the script and see if the thing, they want to verify that you didn't change the behavior of the full end-to-end conversion.
Oh, you're saying you want like a regression script to regenerate, or to reconvert?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
Okay. And then that way.
And
then
actually,
Rogue can just-
I need to look up how the Travis stuff
Yeah,
works,
it's easy.
and maybe do the same thing.
And that way he could just use that file for when he's doing the demos.
Oh, Brandon, you're also a Kubernetes guru, I assume. So one of the things that we did is we did some work to get it to run in a container.
Okay.
So then there's like a whole issue of like digitally signing stuff, and like how do we organize the components to be able to work in a container environment. So that also might be something you could help with, and
Sure.
maybe you can get it set up so people can run the demos in a,
Yes.
in a virtual environment and container. So
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so anything else before we move on?
And then I guess I will do templates and styling and results presentation. Results presentation and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, I think it'd be great if we could get our results reporter to work in a, like, simple, download this one container image file, and they can, run stuff on it pretty, relatively easily.
Yeah.
So I think the containers, address two issues. One is security, and the other is just packaging things, so it's easy to use, and you don't have to install the right versions of this thing and that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like something that Brandon will be able to help with as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a CLI right now, so I don't know if that's, do people deploy CLIs that way?
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next item then.
Item number 9, committee recommendations. Discussion and possible action regarding committee recommendations on the subject of requirements, open source, software development processes, software architecture and design, hardware, intellectual property, and testing.
Okay, so for the past few meetings, we haven't really, we kind of petered out by the time we got to this item. And I don't know if people have things they want to talk about or not.
Is there a reason the testing procedure right here again? Or is this just?
What's that?
So at least in my binder, under.
Oh, sorry, I didn't take that out, no.
Oh, is that's not, okay.
No,
I mean, I kind of feel like our recommendations are almost like ahead of where the department is right now, so it's not, we don't really.
So I think I might have brought this up last time, but I think before the department gets too far along, I think we should put some of the security background, appendix in.
Yeah, and months ago, I promised I would read your thing.
Right.
You know, that never happened.
Would you want to make that, maybe at the next meeting, we can discuss it earlier, we could have security, just do it earlier in the meeting.
And again, it's one of these things, you want to make sure that DT kind of, I don't know how they'll respond to this set of recommendations out of the blue. But again, engaging with them on these recommendations at an early date, I think is valuable. Again, if they like what we're doing and they bless it, then we go ahead and do more. If they say, oh, we have our own procedures and processes, then we have to regroup and figure out how to respond to that.
Well, hopefully she'll continue coming, we can just talk to her.
Okay, that's good.
So Brandon, just, I guess it was in the agenda items in one of the prior meetings, but I wrote up some text on security, which was, a lot of it was more like a glossary or just kind of a general background. They weren't making specific recommendations, but just to outline what security things are. But if you want, I could email you what we had from a prior meeting, if you want to review it and offer some suggestions or whatever.
Yeah, we agree.
What I wrote wasn't really recommendations so much, but it's like the background that you need before you do some real recommendations.
Yeah, I'd like to look.
And you might have some suggestions too. I don't know, I assume you also have up on computer security.
Yeah, implemented a lot of internal security
Yeah.
functions inside of Kubernetes.
I mean, I think one of the challenges is we don't want to, if we make it too hard to comply with the recommendations, it could almost have the opposite effect.
But one of the things to think about is, do we want to talk about security in the context of using a container, or do we want to talk about security in a broader sense? Because obviously using containers gives you part of what you need automatically. And maybe the recommendation is that the solution be packaged for use this way.
I mean, I think security needs to be addressed in a broad sense.
Yeah.
And then, using containers as a method for implementing security could be one of the recommendations.
Right, exactly.
But, I agree, you don't want to make it too hard. That is, so part of Open's results reporter, if it can run in a recommended environment, then you could show, oh, it's not really that hard.
But I think there's also two completely separate, or maybe not completely separate, but two not super tightly related parts to it, right? Like one is that kind of stuff, like having things like having containers that are signed, like being able to have the software that's certified be digitally signed by the Secretary of State's office when they certify it. Those kinds of things I feel like are sort of one bucket, and the other bucket is you've also done some brainstorming and made some proposals about sort of more chain of custody related security and encryption.
The whole data flow.
Yeah, exactly. But that's sort of exactly. So that's security of the data and moving, as opposed to security of software or the distribution of the software. And those are of course not unrelated, but I feel like they're pretty separate buckets.
There's also processes too.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I feel like that you can make some sort of separation in are you trying to ensure that the software that you believe should be running on the machine is running on the machine, or are you trying to ensure that the data produced by the machine ends up being the same data that's like integrated into the results report.
Yeah, I mean,
Those
well,
are-
I think that's the really
Yeah.
more important than anything is you need the archive of data, and you want to make
Mhm.
everything open so you could reproduce it and validate it and authenticate it. So, I mean,
for
authenticating
sure.
the data is more important than
Right.
even validating the software, which only works partway because it's sort of impossible to validate the hardware. And
Yeah, and I'm offering this up like as the possible framework for like, sort of, because the security thing that you've been working on is also quite large. And I'm sort of suggesting this as a possible way of like, sort of splitting that into where you say,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing for that objective A that I mentioned, this is what we do for objective B that I mentioned, and you can keep it as.
Right, and the objective B,
Adjustable.
well,
Yeah, and you
or
think
you
objective
said-
B is more important, yeah.
well, that relates to the architecture of the whole project.
Yeah,
So they could come up with an architecture where you can't do that.
right.
But I think one of our recommendations should be that, that the architecture can
Mhm.
track the chain of custody, if you want to use those words.
Yeah, or the flow of data, or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, but I think, because I think one of the things about your security thing too was like 15 pages or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really just a
Brain dump.
Yeah, it's a brain dump, and
Well,
that's fine, like, I don't need to,
but of definitions of things,
yeah. But,
tools and
yeah,
what cryptography is and how it's used and so forth.
yeah, but I think that, I mean, I sort of had this feeling before, but this is the first time I've really like articulated into words, is like, I felt that like jumped back and forth here and there for a bit from like, between like concepts, some of these concepts are used in both, right, so that.
Right,
If you're writing, like, a
also
glossary,
Chris's point, well, it was a brain dump.
Yeah, and it was a
I
brain
mean,
dump.
literally, it was a brain dump,
Exactly.
I just wrote it.
It was
in
never
brain-
going to be structured, yeah.
So it's not polished, but the other thing that Chris pointed out was there's sort of well-established things and definitions that were part of it, and others were sort of ways of using cryptography in the voting application that aren't like in common practice.
Mhm.
But cryptography pretty much is not used in practice. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big deal that they put SHA 256 sums on their data.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not digitally signed, it's just hash codes.
Right. Good start.
yeah.
I mean, that's how far things are.
Yeah.
And then, like we talked about last time with DEF CON, where like the administrator password
Yeah,
for the voting machine was like password or something.
but yeah, I'm sort of offering that as a suggestion for like how you might structure it so that the individual pieces end up being more digestible, because I think also if you have an overview of like, this is sort of what cryptography and security related things are, and it's sort of like the things that you lay out sort of relate to, like, a lot of them relate to both, or like, one relates to one thing or one relates to the other. I think in retrospect, one of the reasons that I found it somewhat difficult to read the first time around was because that sort of separation wasn't there, and I was sort of like, when like 9 pages in, you're like, oh, now I sort of realize that there's these two big concepts going on, and now I can separate them in my head, and I have to reread the previous 9 pages to like understand that.
There's another way to do it, which is the spy versus spy approach, where you identify vulnerabilities that are security vulnerabilities, and then you talk about how you mitigate them. And this, when somebody says, well, what do you do about X? You've identified that when you say, here's what we're going to do about X. And so it's a different way to structure the broad picture into, bad passwords, for example. What do you do with compromised passwords? What do you do with...
So I think maybe I also need to split it to things that are more glossary type of like, these are like the definitions of different parts of cryptography versus how you use it, like digitally signing voter files or
Right.
coming up with a key, a single-use temporary key during
But
voting.
even step back from that, what is the purpose of doing cryptography? It's because you want to prevent this certain vulnerability. So,
I mean, also, I'm kind of like, I'm also wondering, like, does this really have to be like a encyclopedic reference? I mean, we're just trying to make recommendations and stuff, and do we really need to be?
well,
I
that's
guess I was
that's
concerned-
part of my idea. It says, look, these are the things that typically can go wrong from a security standpoint, and we recommend that to prevent this, you check for that, or you do that, or,
So I think the point of writing it was to get enough of the glossary definition so that people will be able to understand the report without, just using these
Okay.
fairly technical
Right, well-
terms.
Well, like a glossary normally just has like a couple sentences on each term. That's right.
Yeah, but when you're dealing with cryptography, it's not so easy to write like 2 sentences.
Well, or maybe it needs to be another term. I don't know. I just.
I think maybe towards that point, I think my suggestion would be like, I guess we haven't really sort of defined how sort of technically defined we receive the items of the recommendations report to be. But I think we can always start with like, you can start with sort of laying out your higher level plans. So like we will like sign this thing and then this gets signed by that. And like have that laid out for like your proposals for how to like secure a chain of custody or whatever. And then if we decide that we need to explain what the digital signatures are, that's something you can do later as well. And it's kind of difficult to sort of figure out where to draw the line. But I feel like if novice is here and like super advanced is here and the line is somewhere in the middle, I feel like we can start sort of working from this end and then keep going until we figure we sort of have hit the line. So like the kinds of things that you were saying, like the things that are not in common practice, I think are good to explain. Like the notion that you might use the New York Stock Exchange for that day to like prove that something was generated after that day. Like I think that's good to explain in a few sentences, but I think that before an initial version of this, I don't think that we need to explain like what digital signatures are. That you can sort of say like, okay, we're initially targeting this for an audience that knows at least like the basics of digital cryptography. And then if we decide that the audience is like a less technically knowledgeable audience, then we can add stuff later to say like, well, here's what a digital signature is. Or maybe to say it more concisely, like you could write something that like this group of 5 people could understand. Because I mean, we all know what digital signatures are.
Also, like a glossary entry doesn't need to be like understandable from first principles. You can have like a 2-sentence definition that maybe they have to look something up, but it kind of gives them an idea.
So Brandon, would you like me to just send you my dump of what I have to take care of, or wait for a cleaned up version?
I'll look at the dump.
Okay. Well, maybe you have some good suggestions on like where to go.
Sure.
Okay, let's take public comment.
I don't think I have got
All right, so is there anything else? So it sounds like you're gonna come back to us with some material at the next meeting. Anything else on number 9? Okay, next item.
Item 10, topics for future discussion. Discussion and possible action regarding topics for future discussion.
Okay, is there anything people can think of that we haven't mentioned that we want to talk about?
well, it would be useful to enumerate the fact that we're going to have the security discussion early in.
Yeah.
Well, at least before they get going with their architecture design. And maybe even, I guess they're having their initial.
In the next meeting that we,
Oh,
when in the agenda creation, that we itemize this set of security recommendations.
Yeah, it'll be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll continue our other discussions like the CLA and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so are you, I guess you'll get an update from Roan on the CLA. Are you going to then talk to the
Yes.
city?
Yeah, so I will generate a slightly modified version of that CLA and then send it to Chris, and Chris is going to engage with the city.
So next meeting, I guess you can report on what the city thinks about the CLA and software ownership or whatever.
yeah.
So this is not for really completely the purpose of the agenda item, but I think it's possibly a good thing to do at the end of meetings. So we just identified what you and I will do with this delay. And it sounds like you will prepare like an updated version of your security document.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far I'll get on that.
Right.
Because I think my main push is to try to get sample data for our results reporter up, so we can, once we get the CSS running, we can start producing realistic looking data.
Yeah. And so I will work on results report template and styling.
And I'll try as soon to put up a set of sample data, that just shows good and bad or whatever ways that people are reporting results.
And it sounds like Brandon is going to do some computer vision stuff with the valves, maybe? Is that what you?
Yeah, I'm just gonna do some icons, so you can see what's
Cool.
possible, and I'll just,
And
so
if
I
you
can
want-
understand their results report, I'll just be there writing.
And also, if you want to look into getting things to run in a containerized
Yeah,
environment and
Yes,
package it.
that's easy to do.
So there is a container on there, but there might be a different way to structure it.
Yeah, I'll just
Okay.
get it running on my Kubernetes cluster.
Yep.
And then, Chris, it sounds like you're going to implement more features in results reporter. It's basically sort of, I guess you can kind of tell, but basically, at the end of the meeting, I always want to remember what my to-dos are for the next meeting, and
Yeah,
some
I
sort
mean, I
of-
think it's possible that some data might be missing from the input file, but I'll let you know.
Well, one of the problems is the input file is sort of just for testing, so it's it's very tiny, so that we can see everything.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I think there might be data that's missing even from the small,
Okay,
but I'll let you know.
yeah. But anyway, not too long, I should have a full set.
Okay, good. Good.
And I think that's just about all the action items that people signed up for.
Yeah, okay. And, yeah. All right, so, public comment on this item. Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, so the time is now 9:10 p.m. The meeting is adjourned. Good night.